Because you got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been.
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
So I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing mind.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome, boxing fans, to episode 591 of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, a proud member of the Sports Social Network, found at 8 o'clock in the UK on Sundays, 12 o'clock Pacific time. Here I am right now just with Dez. I'm sure some of the other folks will wander in here, but heck, we got a lot to talk about. What a day it was yesterday, full of drama, interesting scorecards, good knockouts. All in all, Riyadh season delivered, and we have an undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world via a disputed split decision victory. Artur Beterbiev winning by decision for the first time in his career over Dmitry Bivol. It was a fight that I think will be discussed by hardcore boxing fans for a long time. I don't know if it will penetrate the regular sports zeitgeist, but Des, this was a fantastic fight. Fought on a very high level for those that are into real boxing. I can see it going either way. I thought Bivol just nicked it, but what a fight it was. And the fact that you go down the stretch, Beterbiev was doing his thing, inarguably really winning the last couple of rounds there to seal the deal. But Dmitry Bivol, what a tough guy. I mean, he did not succumb where everyone else before him had. This is a fight between two truly tough guys with skill levels that are just so far beyond their peers.
Yeah, well said, Matty. A brilliant introduction and a great. It was a great advert for our sport. And last night I was proud to be a boxing fan. And the way them two guys conducted themselves before, during, and after, what was it? An undisputed fight. And we don't see many of them. I think both guys have covered themselves and the sport in glory. And whatever way you saw it going, you can't, as a boxing fan, you can't not be proud of what we saw in last night's main event, don't you think?
Oh yeah, this is what we look forward to, and it was an outcome that we didn't see coming. It was I had wondered if allowed on the pod if this was just going to be another one where it doesn't really fit the script, and it kind of did in the ebbs and flows. But Beterbiev by a split decision, that was a pretty unexpected outcome, even for the real experts of the sport.
Yeah, it was. And that in itself was a uniqueness about last night, and one of many uniquenesses that we have. These two brilliant fighters, two generationally good fighters, two modern era great fighters, two Hall of Famers last night, boxing for all four belts. And the fact that it went to the cards in when Beterbiev's never been there, and a lot of people even during the fight, I thought Bivol might get to Beterbiev. And then there was times in that fight last night that Bivol was hanging tough.
I thought
Just
both
brilliant.
guys were hurt, actually, in the fight.
Yeah, they was badly hurt at times. And it just goes to show you, though, it all goes into this pot of Russian mystique. They never showed they was tired. They never showed they was hurt. But we, as boxing fans that know how good these guys are, I knew in round 7 that Beterbiev had got to Bivol. And it was about now, can you get hold of him? And Bivol, being the brilliant boxer that he was, knew how to look after himself and hang tough. And there was times in that fight where I thought Bivol was really nailed Beterbiev, and we're going to see a different facet to Beterbiev's game. Like, as boxing fans, we could genuinely talk about this for the next 2 hours, just this fight alone. It was brilliant. And I remember last night, we've got a WhatsApp group, and from last night's first bell to this morning, there was nearly 1,500 messages coming across. Everybody was on it. It was a really exciting, enjoyable fight for your average boxing fan. And I've got to say, we talk about it just being for boxing fans. When you look at, I'm speaking to people in the gym, and I'm speaking to people, that I mix with socially, that are not always what you call boxing fans. They dip in and dip out. And you see the people that was there last night. Now, this was more than just a fight for the hardcores. This was a fight that could potentially cross over. They may not have enjoyed it like me and you did, and the guys in the chat, but it was a fight that did cross over.
Well, and what I thought was great about it is it didn't fit the script, while at the same time it absolutely did. There were no knockdowns. There wasn't a knockout. Bivol didn't win the decision, but the ebbs and flows that we were expected there, the great footwork, the short, sharp shots, it was a display of absolute talent from honestly a generation of fighters that are going to be going out, because I really feel like this is kind of the remnants of the old Russian system, and the closest you might be getting to it these days is what the Uzbeks have been doing.
Yeah, and perhaps we should touch on that a little bit, because if we're going to talk about these two, let's rewind a touch, and let's not go over it, but let's not go on about it, but let's touch on it a bit. Bivol come through the amateur boxing system and was probably a very good junior, expected to do well as a senior, but he didn't do as well as in the seniors what he did in the juniors. So he won a lot of junior titles. He won a Russian national title, but that's kind of where his ceiling was. And Beterbiev, who was an outstanding amateur, who won the World, the Europeans, and the Amateur World Cup. And I've said it on this pod before, that Amateur World Cup, it was as good as an Olympics. It was exceptionally high level. He went to 2 Olympic Games, Beterbiev. He went to Beijing and drew the Chinese kid and got beat. The Chinese kid went to get a gold. He went to London, drew Usyk, got beat, and Usyk went and got gold. So on another day, perhaps Beterbiev's got 2 gold medals in his pocket. But the point is, these are both come through a very good system, a very good amateur pedigree. And as pros, they've been almost flawless. I mean, look, Beterbiev's such a high level. People talk about being dropped by Callum Johnson. I always think, I'm not worried about kids getting dropped. I'm more concerned how they respond. Beterbiev dropped Johnson in the first round, got dropped in the second, went and stopped Callum in the fourth. Bivol, we could argue that, well, you didn't put your foot down, particularly against guys like Lyndon Arthur, Spider Richards, who we see as domestic level fighters. But he probably didn't have to. He knows what he's doing. So we could probably find moments in their careers that we could think this might be an option, this might be a gap in the door. But when we saw them last night, I think we all have to agree that they was both exceptional. And I don't remember 1 minute of any round that was dull, quiet, or wasn't engaging or compelling. It was a truly brilliant fight last night.
Yeah, and even in the moments where the casual observer might say there was nothing going on because maybe nobody was throwing punches for a little bit of a time or anything like that, they were always doing a foot feint, feinting with their hands, trying to move, adjust, find position. Something I thought that Beterbiev did really well is he actually was able to kind of spin around to his right hand side and sneak right hands over the top of Bivol. I thought that was a little bit of clever footwork for an older guy who just is getting over knee surgery. They did it was a fantastic fight. What's interesting though is, I think they're evenly matched. Who knows if there's a rematch? I still think it could go either way, and I would hope the odds are still fairly tight. But I think only one of these guys is a real competitor in the 15-round era, which is when you get into the level of greatness talks, and that's Artur Beterbiev.
I think if last night had a 13th and a 14th round, Bivol might get stopped. I think Bivol hung tough last night from round 7 onwards. Bivol had a really good round 9, let me be clear. And Bivol was in the fight. He was in every round. Look, I don't want to... Let's be clear here. On the Asylum, we're boxing people. And we cover every fight. We cover the small hall shows and the big events. And what I always push whenever I talk to people, in a close fight like this, we can never scream robbery. We can never, spit our dummy out. You have to sit back, like my old man used to say, I'm not sure that one's going to go because it was close. And you've got to be prepared that your guy never got it. Me personally, what I saw last night was probably 3 phases of a really good fight. Now, I want to come back to what you just said there, but I'm going to just touch on the opening 5 or 6 rounds. But I want to come back to the point you just made there, where Bivol was in close. Beterbiev was in close, and he was finding his right hand around the corner and touching Bivol around the top of the head and around the temple, getting around that brilliant guard that Bivol's got. And Anthony Yard and Matt Christie touched on it as well in the Sky studio. Matt Christie, by the way, is a brilliant boxing. He calls a fight really well. He knows what he's looking for. Anthony Yard, who's been in there with Beterbiev, he knew what Beterbiev was doing because Anthony Yard's felt it. And he probably had a great admiration for Bivol because Bivol was managed to do what Anthony Yard probably couldn't do, which was somehow nullify this attack from Beterbiev. But I thought the first 3 rounds, Matty, went to Bivol, and it started how I thought it would. It was a battle of distance, and Bivol's feet were really good, and he was moving, he was sprightly, and he was keeping the distance and the range that suited him. And then something happened, and I don't want to go on about it because I don't want to sort of run off on what I think. I'd like to know how you saw the first 5 rounds, but I thought the first 3 went to Bivol, and then he slowed down a little bit in the 4th. And then in the 5th, it started to change. And then I thought Beterbiev came into his own and started imposing the distance that suited him in around the 6th. How did you see them first half a dozen rounds, Matty?
I think I've had it 4-2 for Bivol at the end of 6.
That's really fair. Yeah, I'm the same. I would have given it 4-2, 5-1, or if I could do a share, 4-1 and a share. It was the same sort of thing as that. Yeah, Bivol started really well.
Yeah, he had a good start. When he was moving a bit more and tripling his jab, like he was absolutely controlling the fight. But I think what happened to him is around the 4th round, 5th round, he's probably started realizing I can't move this much and go 12. He's
Correct.
like, I'm going to have to hang in the pocket just a little bit more, and as much as I don't want to. And at that point in time, what he did is he opened up Beterbiev's own jab as a weapon, and we know what a weapon it can be. And then he was able to set up his shots. If there was one thing I think Bivol didn't do enough of that might have helped him in the later rounds, is I think he needed to go downstairs more. And I know that's not typically his thing. He's a sharp kind of, head puncher, quick combinations upstairs. But I think he really got to try to take away the wheels from Beterbiev, and I think the only way is to do that downstairs. And he failed in that, and I think that might have what cost him the fight, because a little bit more worn down Beterbiev wouldn't have been able to do in those last 2 rounds what he did, which was apparently seal the fight in his favor.
And I think that's a great point. And Right, to expand on that a bit, I think if they have a return, I think Beterbiev will go for Bivol's body earlier because he wants to slow Bivol's feet down because Bivol's feet were really good last night. But I think the reason why Bivol never went for Beterbiev's body was because when you throw them body shots, you are exposing your chin. And last night, Bivol made a real conscious effort of not having his chin hanging out at all. He must have so much respect for Beterbiev's power. Going from the first to the fifth, I felt that Bivol thought, and I'm convinced that he thought, I'm going to get a really good pattern started. I'm going to sort of maybe convince the people in the crowd and the networks and the judges that I'm in control of the situation. And I think his directive was, I'm gonna keep Bivol offset and I'm going to keep him away from me. And then I think after round 4, I think he realised that I can't do this for much longer. So I'm not going to go another 2 rounds like this and have the championship rounds where I'm gassed out. I'm going to conserve and I'm going to stay in the pocket, but I'm going to win the last minute of every round. Similar to what Ray Leonard did with Marvin Hagler. I'm going to have the eye-catching punches. I'm going to be snappier, but in the last minute. But I'm going to reasonably look after myself. And he did. He looked after himself really well in the first 2 minutes. But I think from round 6 onwards, all barring round 9, I think Bivol gave the first 2 minutes away in every round. And that's too much to give away to someone like Beterbiev. And I thought round 7, 8, 10, 11 and 12, I think there was a moment in every one of them rounds where Bivol, if it was anyone else, would have been stopped. And it's only credit to Bivol that how good he was, that he hung tough, rode through to the last minute, and then started throwing the eye-catching stuff and looking snappier. But then you had this battle of attrition between 2 brilliant fighters. When we heard the 10-second click, both of them would let their hands go. So I think the strategy was win the first quarter, hang tough, and pinch the last minute of every round. And I think if he'd have invested in the body a little bit sooner, I think he might have put himself on offer. But I think that's something Beterbiev would definitely look for if they have a return, because Bivol's feet offset Beterbiev for the first quarter of last night's fight. And it got him out of jail in them tough rounds when Bivol was hanging tough.
Yeah, the skill level of these guys is just at another level. I mean, there's definitely an argument. They're both pound for pound, obviously, and I think even after last night, they're still both on the pound for pound top 10 list. I would see no good reason to take either of them off of it. Obviously not the winner. It's those subtle things that make all the difference in a fight. And from 10,000 feet, something might look even because of this, that, or the other. But there's something with the long education in the sport and the developed skills that once you get in there, it's night and day. I think going like Bivol, the fight I forgot about him was the Gilberto Ramirez fight. I thought Ramirez had a fair shot going into that, and he was made to look like a complete freaking fool in there for the bulk of that fight. And that's because even though if you're not paying a lot of attention, they seem fairly evenly matched. When you get in there, not the case. Last night, it was the case, though. And I don't know that there's another fighter in the division that can make the argument that they can compete with them on that level, except for, thank God, in December that David Benavidez versus Jesse Hart is not going to be on the Gervonta Davis undercard, which is already crap as it is. No, it is David Benavidez not fighting Jesse Hart whatsoever. He'll be taking on David Morrell, it looks like, in late January. And I think and that's going to be at 175 because they both got whatever freaking interim trinkets at a higher weight class they had last time out. And I think the winner of that fight, Des, it would be potentially competitive with one of these guys. Not guaranteed. I think obviously either Bivol or Beterbiev would have to be favored in those respected fights against either Benavidez or Morrell. But I think one of those guys actually might offer them something that at least might give us an interesting fight like we saw yesterday.
I think we've got to see a bit more of Morrell at a higher level, and Benavidez will give us that. I like Benavidez. I think he's He's high level. I'm not quite sure on from what I saw last night, depending on both Beterbiev and Bivol coming through that the same people, because sometimes fights like that can take a little bit off you, take a little bit away from you. But if they're both the same as what I saw last night, I think even Beterbiev would struggle to live with them two. I want to be clear on this though. So I don't want to sort of put over my opinion too strongly. You know, I picked Beterbiev going in, and I thought Beterbiev won it by 2 rounds last night. But I've got to be clear, it was so close, and I wouldn't have no fallout or dispute with anyone that thought Bivol won it. I think it was that good a contest, and I think both guys exhibited such a high level of skill, and it was so nuanced, you know, in terms of how Bivol used his feet to keep the right distance, and how Beterbiev would shuffle in close, and how he threw these very short uppercuts and hooks with not very little pullback. It was just push up, and he was getting through, and he was tapping the door on the first one and coming through it on the second one. The angles, the feints, the movement. Had them two guys got through 12 threes last night, you can only say that both of them on a pound for pound top 5 list. On what I saw last night, and I know it's very easy to sort of get carried away, especially when it's so fresh. And as usual, the Asylum, we come on, you know, sort of 24 hours after the event, and we talk about it. But my eyes don't lie to me. What I saw last night was high level, and it was Roy Jones, Michael Spinks, Andre Ward high level, and the two guys last night belong in that group. I'm not quite sure we can put Benavidez or Morrell in that group just yet, although I accept that Benavidez and Morrell is a brilliant fight, but I'm not sure the winner of that beats the winner or the loser of last night, Matty.
Now, I do expect a rematch to happen. Do you think a rematch will go much differently than this one? Honestly, depending on the venue, the judges, et cetera, if we saw the exact same fight as last night, give or take, it could go the other way. Do you think the rematch is going to surprise us if it does happen, and how it plays out?
Right. So, a couple of things here. I'm not sure we will see the rematch, but let's just say we do. It's quite common for boxing guys to say, well, in a rematch, the winner wins the second one, but clearer. That doesn't apply to these two, because there wasn't a lot in it, and it wasn't. Neither fighter was let down by their gas tank or by their ring IQ or their ring generalship. Neither fighter can improve on a jab or their footwork. This was a chess match. You know, this was one of them type of fights where we're talking fine margins. Now, you could argue that Bivol could say, well, on the next one, I'm going to keep my distance for 6 or 7. And then I'm going to play out the championship rounds how I see fit. And let's be clear, there's a lot of people in this chat that probably thought Bivol won a lot of them, or was worth the winning of them championship rounds last night. I thought Bivol lost the championship rounds quite big, and I think that cost him. But Beterbiev might think, well, I'm going to go to the body and invest a lot earlier, but that might stop Bivol being able to make a play in the second half of the fight or the last third of the fight. I don't think if they fought again, I think you've just got to sit back and enjoy it for what it is, and accept that this could be one of those type of doubles or trilogies where you just don't know how it's going to play it until it's in front of you and you're watching it. I will say this: the closest I've seen to this, and it was Michael Thompson in our chat who said it to me. This reminded me so much of Canelo and Golovkin too. It was that high level that it was so good at times. You wasn't watching their hands; you was watching their feet and just seeing how they're moving each other around. And Beterbiev, who's a master of bullying people, and who's a master of making you fight when you don't want to fight, who's a master of you can win this round, but you're going to lose this fight. That didn't play out with Bivol. It was a brilliant fight last night. I want to see it again, but I'm not quite sure we will. And if Benavidez comes through morale strongly, which is a really good win for Benavidez, I think that'd be the one that gets put between the two, because I think that's exciting and it's something different, and it gives both fighters, Bivol and Beterbiev, an opportunity to go another direction and probably meet a little bit more down the line. But I'm not quite sure we're getting an immediate rematch. Also, Matty, before we let me answer that one. I also think there's a very good chance we might see Beterbiev against Opetaia up at cruiserweight.
That's an interesting fight.
Look, but Beterbiev is 40 years of age and he's boiling himself down to 12.5 stone. Opetaia is like 14.5. If Beterbiev walks around at 14 stone, like we saw more weight disparity between Fabio and Fraser Clark than what we'll see with last night with Beterbiev and Opetaia. And I think if Beterbiev at 40 was allowed to get on the protein, get on the creatine, get on the rice and peas, I think Beterbiev would be a really good 14.5 stoner. And I think he'd carry his weight up. And I think at this stage in his life, I think he'd really embrace not having to boil down. And that's a big jump, light heavy to cruiser. And I think you see a very good version of Beterbiev up at cruiserweight.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea there, and I guess we'll use that as a segue to kind of work through the card. And you nail a lot of things, Des, but unfortunately, when it came to Jack Massie, he was just getting nailed by Opetaia. The corner pulling the plug. He tried his best, but Opetaia, triangle theories don't work, etc., etc. But I think as you watch what Opetaia has done with the rest of the cruiserweight division and just how he generally looks, it goes to show just how damn good even an old Maris Bradis was.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, mate. Goes to show you how. I've always said this, Matty. If it wasn't for Alexander Usyk, maybe Bradis would have been Usyk. Like Bradis would have won that tournament. Bradis would have come up to heavyweight. He'd have probably beaten a Chaz Witherspoon. He'd have probably beaten a Derek Chisora. And maybe on another day in another universe, maybe Bradis gives Anthony Joshua a hard fight. But Usyk was the guy that came into that and he beat them all. So Bradis is that good. I go back to what I said on Friday night. Opetaia, there's such disparity between Opetaia's opponents. You've got Marius Bradis, who's an elite boxer, and you've got what we've seen is area level kids over here. That's how Opetaia was announced to us, because before that we didn't know how good he was. Opetaia came out when he beat Jordan Thompson, and we was all like, "Wow, this kid's for real." And we started looking into him, but we've not seen somewhere in the middle. And I just always said, I don't think Massie beats Opetaia, but we know Massie over here as someone that pushed Richard Riakporhe a strong 12 rounds. I was there. I actually thought he nicked it, but never got it. And Riakporhe's a world-class puncher, and that was for the British title. Then we saw him go 10 rounds with Joe Parker, and then we saw him beat Isaac Chamberlain, who was coming on for really good form and a really good run. So I kind of said, look, I think Massie gives us something firmly in the middle, somewhere between Bradis and the rest of them. What I wanted from Opetaia last night, Matty, was an Opetaia that was chin down, hands up, clean, worked hard in spaces, found his spots, showed the same aggression I've seen him at Zorro and Thompson, but up at a level up. But I wasn't overly impressed with him against Bradis, and I wanted to see more from Opetaia last night. And Jack Massie was a perfect opponent for that. And to get Jack Massie out of there in 6 rounds, Jack is known in this country for having a really good chin. The side disparity was obvious. He was a big cruiserweight Jack. And I think Opetaia performs very, very well. That's what we want to see from Opetaia. If you're as good as we all think you are, getting rid of Jack Massie in 6 rounds is a real feather in your cap.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I liked, the interesting thing is, I think Massie would be a decent kind of a contender gatekeeper area guy at heavyweight. He's a big guy, and it's amazing because we're used to Opetaia typically just seeming so much larger than a lot of his opponents, and he just walked him down, and he stuffed that left hand into his body. He started hooking around the guard, and Opetaia, he's just a really good southpaw. And I like the idea of that Artur Beterbiev fight. I think that's a fantastic idea. for hopefully you'd think within a year, because I'll tell you what, you make a fair point about Beterbiev being on borrowed time at 175, and I feel like Opetaia might be too. He's just stout and muscular. Anyways, joining us also our good friend Eamon Khan. Thank you for joining us there, sir. Before we move on down the undercard, you got in just in time. I know you had a little chat of your own that I anonymously joined for a little while on Twitter, but why don't you share your thoughts with the Boxing Asylum audience as to how you thought the fight went yesterday?
Am I a good friend of the Asylum or a bad friend of the Asylum? How do we know? How do we establish this?
What's that?
Am I a good friend of the Asylum or am I a bad friend of
You're
the
a
Asylum?
very good friend of the Asylum.
You're a brilliant friend of the Asylum, Eamon. You're a brilliant friend of the Asylum, mate.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's how we all doing. You all good?
We're good.
Yeah, good, mate. Thank you.
Wicked. Yeah. So, I mean, I was out for a friend's birthday party last night, so I couldn't really, sit down and score this. Although I did watch the fight in full, and I found a little crevice to kind of tuck myself into and watch the fight whilst music was blasting around me and everyone was having their fun. But I couldn't listen to the commentary, couldn't get engaged. Probably the best way, anyways. But I wasn't sitting there scoring it. I was kind of sitting there enjoying it, really. And from what I saw, it just seemed like a razor close fight here, which looked like a hard to score fight too, because for the most part, whilst I feel that the images that I saw looked like this fight was being fought on Bivol's terms here, a lot of the fight and the fight action seemed to be bouncing off of gloves and bouncing off of arms, and the body shots were really the most effective here. And Bivol was kind of having a bit of his way, and then it sort of slowed down a little bit where Bivol had to kind of stand his ground a little bit more, couldn't use his movement to circle around the ring, and Arthur was able to try and get off and be a bit more effective in throwing his shots. And those last two rounds, Bivol seemed like a spent force, and he knew he just kind of given his all here in the fight, and Arthur was able to really kind of nick those, not nick those, bank those last two rounds. But it just seemed razor close in action between both of them, and just how heavy those punches were, because even though nothing seemed to really visibly hurt Bivol like it has Beterbiev's previous opponents, it was marking him up, it was slowing him down. He said as much in the post-fight that he felt like his hand had gone into his head, and he felt like he really had to kind of grit himself and get through those moments. This was just a super razor close fight between the both of them, and I couldn't really discern a winner out of either of them. I probably would have gone to my head looking at it, maybe picked Bivol here, but not with any real confidence. And I've not watched it back either to give you my impression on it, but it just seemed like a very close fight between the two of them. But what I would say conclusions-wise for it is a couple of things. This wasn't an elite level fight where you can't put it in the realms of, you can't compare it to like a Spence versus Crawford, because we both discern those, or like hardcore audiences discern those as two elite level talents. And when it came down to it, one was in a completely different stratosphere and the other couldn't swim. This wasn't that. This is both of them swimming. This was nip and tuck, and this was two horses. This was two horses racing, and one was pipped to the post. And this is one of those where, and on another day, it might have been
brilliant point,
Bivol who'd come through the win. The other thing is, though, this idea of Bivol, and me and Des have discussed this a little bit here, but we kind of thought maybe there's another gear, maybe there's more to come from Dimitri in the past from what we've seen, because he maybe holds off, and he has said as much. He kind of held back in Richard's fight to get the Canelo fight in the future, and that's helped him. But is there more of him? Is there more to see? That's for me is whilst this was a high level, and you can maybe make the argument that he got to that level to get this fight and maybe nick it from his point of view, I kind of feel like that's a bit of a myth now. This is Bivol, the Bivol that we've seen in the past in the fights beforehand. That's him, and it's a fucking high level. It's a fucking crazy level to be. But there's not much else to come from him at the highest levels. He's not got that extra gear about him. This is the representation of Bivol that we've seen in the past. Is him, and we saw that last night as well too. And it's a brilliant fighter. And I wouldn't want Bivol to be lost in the mix of when we're talking about like heavyweight greats. Like, his name should be, and if he continues to win, if he continues to carry on belts, if he remains undefeated only to Artur Beterbiev, his name should be carried alongside Beterbiev in the conversation, because he's he's so fantastic at what he does, and what he did do, and what appreciation I did get for Bivol as well too, is his kind of real big trick, his real big ace in the pocket is his ability to measure risk at every single moment and be fixed on measuring risk and when to go when he's completely certain that nothing's going to come back and not get caught by anything big. It's so on point. It's so hyper focused, and he showed that in this fight. That's what separates him from nearly every other fighter. He's up there with Usyk in that sense, because he's crafty like that. They know when to go, when to throw, when not to throw, when to move, when to just keep gloving up and going and then throw. And he was pitch perfect pretty much, apart from those last 2 rounds where he gassed out. But when he is him, when he's got it, that's it. That's his ace in the hole. And I thought I only really kind of realized that to its full effect in this fight, having seen Beterbiev come to him, and he made Beterbiev look a bit slow and ponderous in those early rounds. He made him kind of look like, I was kind of worrying a little bit, like, oh no, we got Golovkin versus Canelo 3 here. We got that, and Beterbiev was saying after the fight, like, I mean, he was both of these men, and Beterbiev as well, had their pride here, and he said, look, maybe he's just a better skilled fighter, but I was able to get the victory here. Maybe my knee was a little bit injured here. Maybe it wasn't the full reflection of Artur Beterbiev. I don't know. It seemed to be that it was the case there, but because there was such a high level operator in front of him, he wasn't able to be that destructive force that he had been before. He wasn't in with a guy who wouldn't wilt. And I quite like I know that we want people to speak and want people to talk and reflect the full feelings on the fight, but I quite like that Bivol had that pride about him. Like, look, I've lost here now. I don't want to talk about this. I want to move on. I want to kind of focus on the next thing. Don't want to make any excuses here. This was me. He set such a high bar for himself of perfection, and he admitted that. And it's such a when people say that their own biggest critic, this is his own biggest critic, because he's seeking out perfection in this fight, and because he didn't get the win, he feels like because he wasn't perfect, that's the reason why he didn't win the fight. He didn't have to be perfect in the fight. It's only it's a round or 2 out, and he's got the victory here. And that's how good Dimitri Bivol is here. It's another night for him. This wasn't his night. I don't believe in any of the corruption stuff. I mean, I can't comment on 116, 112 because I didn't score it, so it wouldn't be fair for me to comment on that. But like I said, it did seem like a razor close fight on those scorecards. But it wasn't a robbery by any means. I think that's leaves a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth to kind of take away from what an excellent event this was between both fighters here. I didn't like, although, to be fair, I saw the interview with Bivol on Box Nation and Kornilov, his manager, I believe it is. And I don't agree that I do agree that there seemed to be anyway a lack of professionalism, and people knew the result beforehand. That wasn't fair on Dimitri, and that also kind of
that's fucked up.
Yeah, it really takes away from the spectacle. And
it makes it look shady, whether it was shady or not. It gives people a reason to say something was up.
Sure, but also this kind of thing of like, I don't get this whole like, it really kind of pains me, this whole like trope of like when a fight finishes and go look like you've won, because if you don't look like you've won, then you're admitting that you have not won. You don't think you've won. Like, F all that, man. Like, I don't believe in that at all. If you're exhausted. If you're exhausted, slump in the corner. If you haven't got it in you, if you don't feel like celebrating, whatever, it doesn't reflect that doesn't reflect how the fight went. The previous 12 rounds or whatever reflects how the fight went. So from people are kind of launching that Artur Beterbiev and his team, I don't agree with that either. And also people kind of poking in on as well, like I believe Mark Ramsey has said to Beterbiev, like, you need the knockout, whatever it is. Like, maybe they felt that way, but maybe they felt that was the way to kind of really G another gear out of Beterbiev, and he reacted to that. It seemed he proper put the pressure onto Bivol on those last couple of rounds, those championship rounds there, and got what they needed out of the man. Apart from, of course, that knockout, but Bivol was too good, and his defense was too good to let that happen there. But it was a great fight, not the way the fight I thought would materialize here, and yeah, like, run it back by all means. Do the rematch here, because that's that could go either way again, or could end up a draw, as one scorecard called it. But brilliant fight, absolutely brilliant fight.
Yeah, I kind of think it was
to come in there, Ames. Sorry, Matty, go on, mate. I cut across you.
Well,
Well,
I
I
was
was
going
going
to
to say
say,
to come in there. Sorry, mate. Go on. So I'm not going to let you speak. Go on.
yeah, real quick. I think when in the realm, I want to watch it again, but I really feel like it was probably a 5-5 fight with 2 swing rounds. Like clearly, like where you could separate probably 5 rounds each, where one guy won them, and then there was 2 rounds where you kind of pick your poison. And then that's why the 116-112 seems out of whack. It really was one of those fights that seems oddly confined to in between the 115-113 goalposts.
Yeah, I watched it again today, picking up on that, and I just turned the sound down because I was watching it on the Sky last night, and their broadcast was very pro Bivol, and the commentary was Bivol, and you could sense that the top brass ringside was, I think, all behind Bivol, and this picking up on Ames's point. It's a good point Ames made. I can't stand that rhetoric that fighters have to be picked up on people's shoulders and you have to come out with a certain music and you have to look a certain way. And these 2 guys dispelled all of that. They just came out, they waited for the first bell, they got at it, and at the last bell they went back to their corners. Ames made the point about Beterbiev being told to jump on Bivol. You need these 2 rounds. Look, if we're privileged enough to listen to him to have the ear of a corner, we should keep our mouth shut and stop reading into things and then stop using that to throw back at people. Trainers motivate their kids however they want. They say you're losing or you're winning or you need these 2. They might not need them, but that's how a trainer motivates his kid. And I think there's too many people in boxing that are not grown up. And when you get a result like this, I don't want to see promoters or managers, saying emotive things about cheats and robberies and disgraces. That's not on. When you have a fight like this, it was this close and it was so nip and tuck. Everyone in the industry should say it was a brilliant fight between 2 brilliant lads, and it was that close. You can't argue, but we'll do it again if you want. And we're not hearing enough of that in boxing. And if boxing is ever going to become like the UFC, with the mentality that losing a fight doesn't make you a bad fighter and it's not the end of your career. In fact, in this case, it could be the start of something because so many people fall in love with you last night. Then we've got to start going down the road of, no, we lost a close one, but it's not the big deal. And we don't have to start using this emotive language, using words like cheat and disgrace. And, it was abysmal. That's wrong. I don't agree with a 116-112 scorecard. But I've said this so many times, in such a close fight, in so many rounds that were so subjective and nip and tuck. And boxing's that sport where 2 people can be sitting ringside watching the same fight and see it differently. Sometimes you can have a 3, 4, or 5 round swing. It does happen. We've seen it so many times. Having the luxury of sitting in my front room watching it, I can be a little bit more balanced and a bit more have a rethink. But when you're filling out a card and handing it back, you've got to pick a winner of a round. Sometimes in a close fight, you can get wide cards. We might not like it as boxing fans, but it can happen.
Yeah, there are legitimately close fights that could go either way. That's why boxing is scored by judges and not just based on statistics. So, but anyhow, joining us on the call, Rob Kelly, fantastic. We touched on the undercard and we wound back around, and perfect timing for you. It was a really good fight. What direction did you see it going? Did you agree with the cards?
Not really. No, I thought I was when I was watching it live. I was there up with the missus in the hotel for fucking the anniversary, and she was asleep. I was watching it on the phone, and I was trying to watch it with the sound out. So I wasn't being influenced by anyone, but when I was watching it was I just thought it was a clear enough win for Bivol. I thought he had nicked it from a couple of rounds, and I thought going into the 11th to 12th, providing he doesn't get knocked down, he's going to win this. He's going to nick it by a couple of rounds. I thought he boxed beautifully. I thought he defended well. I thought he circled. I thought he used his feet really well and his skills. And Beterbiev did the same. He used all of his attributes as well. He did the usual. He shuffled. He walked to him. Both of these guys are top of the heap. There's been a couple of fights over the past kind of time since I've been on the pod where you're watching high level shit. You know, there's different fights that bring drama. There's different fights that bring other exciting things. But this was just high level stuff throughout the whole way. Um, Thinking, combat, um, action, tension. You know, and two top guys pitting themselves, their best attributes against each other. I thought it was going to be a rocky ride for Bivol. I thought he was going to have to overcome some moments, but I thought he deserved the decision. Honestly, I thought the cleaner work all night was from Bivol. I thought he went upstairs, downstairs with the jab. He initiated a lot of the combinations. He answered. He had the last say in a lot of the exchanges. Beterbiev obviously was that, you know, he's going to have shaky moments against, but after Beterbiev, you're going to have to deal with that. Like, but I thought he did deal with it. Like, I thought he took a lot of shots on the gloves. Thought it was interesting. He didn't clinch until like late in the fight, like the last third of the fight. Now maybe that's, I suspect that clinching Beterbiev doesn't actually do you any good. It might fucking take more out of you because he's such a fucking piece of granite, like, and a strong guy. So maybe getting into the clinch with him is not the best thing. But even if that's part of the strategy, he executed that down the stretch. He didn't seem to go to hold. Like, I thought he did just enough. I can see 115, 113 either way. Can't see 116, 112 in this particular scenario, because when you look at it, all three of the judges gave the last 3 rounds to Beterbiev. So where do you find the other 5 for him between 1 and 9? And that's where it gets a little bit lousy. Like, I didn't like that at all. I like that they're going to do it again. I don't think maybe Bivol could beat him in the rematch. I think that was his chance. I think Beterbiev, providing age wise and everything, that they make this rematch pretty swiftly. We might get to him this time, but brilliant fight for everybody involved. Perfect fight for the purists, and yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that Bivol didn't get it. But you know, either way or a draw, I'd be happy. But I see. It just goes to show you as well. Like, I hate this fucking cliche of, well, it's what you like, because it shouldn't be what you like. It's the fucking criteria are clearly outlined on how you score a fight, but there is two of them that leave room for interpretation. So it's effective aggression and ring generalship. So at what point is Beterbiev walking Bivol down without throwing ring generalship? And you know, at what point does it become ring generalship to Bivol because he's fucking making a miss, or he's having him following him, and stuff like that. So clean punches landed, effective aggression could go either way, I guess. But yeah, my overall all feeling from watching it the first and second time was that Bivol did enough to win. But this lodging protests and shit, like, we see a stinker of a card on every single fight, we watch. It's just a pity that there's one stinker on a really good fight, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I'll tell you what was really this just might be my opinion, Rob, but I thought that come about the second round, we'd always wondered, like, does Bivol have extra gears? And I kind of felt like around the second round, he started getting into third gear, like something that we had maybe only seen him touch a couple times before in his career. So what did you think on that? Did we see him raise his level at some point in this fight to what we had not seen before?
Absolutely. I think he had to, and he had to be at his best. I think both of them had to be at their best. But I think he made Beterbiev look like he wasn't at his best in the first half of the fight, and then obviously Beterbiev came more into it down the stretch. But yeah, maybe he might have hit the gas a little bit too early, and kind of blew a gasket middle rounds, like, and then didn't get a second win. But a lot of that, it comes down to the physical. They asked him afterwards, did Beterbiev hurt him? He said he even hurt him through the block. So he says, even though I caught a lot of the shots with the block, like, the impact, I felt it in my jaw because he punched
And
so
his
hard.
eye too, and I mean, you could tell, like, picking his glove just hitting his eye from
Yeah.
taking shots off
And he
high
was honest
guard.
that I like that from the two of them. They're honest, but Beterbiev was like, I can't tell you why I didn't perform well in this fight. He fought well, and Bivol was like, well, he does punch hard, but he said the pressure he puts you under is also like a punch because you're feeling that pressure as well. So the two of them acknowledged the good things that the other ones did. And you like to see that, like, you know, that, but you do like to see that. It's funny because I knew the decision was going to go to Beterbiev when I saw them kind of half celebrating just before the decision was announced. Like, and apparently someone had gave him the nod inside. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I did see that years ago with I don't know if anyone, Des will probably remember, Joe Kazagi and Bernard Hopkins. Frank Warren jumped in the ring, basically fucking smiling there, like, you fucking got this one, mate. I've been talking to the guys. But yeah, top level fight. I'd like to see the second one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, it'll be interesting if there is a rematch on this one, because I'll tell you what, from last week we were talking that there was already some similarities between Ward and Kovalev as far as fight for light heavyweight supremacy, etc. aims. But I'm kind of curious if we don't see something similar in a rematch where Andre Ward completely flipped the script, went to the body and took out the puncher in the fight. I that's why I'm kind of curious about it. It kind of is following this track of something we've seen before, and it was really a good pair of fights.
I don't think so. I think this will take the path of, if they do a rematch, of Canelo and Golovkin 1 and 2 and not 3. Well, potentially maybe 3, because Golovkin was getting old. Like Beterbiev seems to be getting old, and he's now admitting, maybe a couple of things off. Maybe my knee was hurt. Maybe I just wasn't the full reflection of myself in the fight. So maybe it goes that way. But this is a razor close fight, man. It's a razor tight fight. I expect to be the exact same as well too. If there is a rematch between the two of them, it's absolutely brilliant. And I don't think you could solidly pick a winner with just how neck and neck these two are, both men. So no, I don't think so. I don't think this would be a case of like Ward versus Kovalev at all. I think either man can make a case for building something off of the back of that game plan, but it wouldn't be I couldn't see something resounding happening for either men. And you would back Beterbiev. For someone like myself, I'd back Beterbiev for that to happen. I'd say Beterbiev would be the guy to do that. But no, there was no big dent put in, for want of a better phrase, considering what happened on the weekend. But there was no big dent put in by either men, really. Visibly, there's no big wobbles. There's no big. It was just endurance from Bivol, and then just a lack of effective operation from Beterbiev in the first few rounds because of what Bivol was doing. But no big wobble, no big shot, nothing from either men, really. Like Beterbiev took a little bit more, but you've got to negate that with Bivol's shots not having that sting, and they might knock the head back a bit, but are they really jarring Beterbiev? It didn't seem like that was the case for me, so I can't see that being the case for it being reflecting of the two Kovalev and Ward fights.
Well, we'll see. I hope they do make the rematch. As far as it goes, I think we all do. Speaking of rematches, Frazier Clark and Fabio Wardley didn't go exactly as many people expected. The over/under was 10.5 rounds. Well, it should have been 1. Wardley just absolutely obliterating Clark after what was a pretty fun start to the fight, breaking his jaw in the process. I've seen some pictures. It was a pretty nasty shot. I tell you what, Des, I don't know that this pair of fights is going to end up in a trilogy. That was quite conclusive, a nasty ending. Fabio Wardley, the only where to go is up. Frazier Clark, the only place to go is the hospital.
Yeah, I didn't like Frazier's weight. I didn't like what he coming at. I thought the first fight he gassed out in the second half, and he really struggled to get over the line, and he collapsed at the final bell, which says to me that if I'm in the camp of Wardley, I'm saying, right, let's get this fight at a fast pace, but a bit earlier. And we saw Fabio come out the blocks last night. And if I'm in the Frazier Clark camp, I'm saying, right, let's get fitter and prepare for a fast-paced fight. So I don't know how you do a 10-week camp and come in half a stone heavier than the first one. I think they got their weight wrong, but that's not the reason for last night. I think Frazier was static. I think he was too big. And I think he was there to be heavy bagged. But something was said to me 30 years ago, and it's true. Anyone, no matter who you are, can get caught cold. And I think the way Fabio came out the blocks, the way he set about Frazier, I just think he got caught cold in the moment. Now, there is something to be said. There's a correlation between these elite performance amateur squads and big men. Whether it's Audley Harrison, David Price, Anthony Joshua, Yoka, Hergovich, Fraser, they all seem to be like, Say that again, mate.
Joe Joyce. It just took Zheng to be that much bigger than him.
Well, they all remind me of lions brought up in a zoo. And when you turn pro and you come into the heavyweight division, you're going to come across lions that were brought up in the wild. And Fraser done things, even in that short round last night, that I thought that was so naive. He didn't know how to look after himself. He didn't know how to tie up an aggressive, come forward fighter that wants to heavy bag you. And at one point, Fabio landed a right hand over the top and it buzzed Clark. And then Clark got back into it, got himself set, and he threw a lovely uppercut on the inside. But Fabio didn't go backwards. He come forward. And he said, and he had that mentality of, you've hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And I don't think when you've done 10 years flying around the world, winning trophies, being told you're wonderful, I don't think you're programmed to compete with that. And Fraser done something that was so bizarre, so amateur, so naive. He turned his back. He leant on the rope and turned his back. And the referee just let him continue. And Fabio hooked him. And that was the start of the next phase, which led to the right hand over the top, which broke Fraser's jaw. I just don't think they're streetwise enough. I don't think they're wild enough. I don't think they're feral enough. I think they rely too much on their technical brilliance that got them so far in the amateurs. And it's perplexing if you put it on paper and go, how did a kid who's had 3 or 4 unlicensed, it might be a bit more than that, but a handful or half a dozen unlicensed, beat Simon Vallily, who won a Commonwealth gold, Nathan Gorman, who probably won every junior title you can win, Adelaide, who was a national ABA champion, and now Clark, who's Olympic bronze. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because this kid goes in there and means it. He's got his chin down, his hands up, and he's throwing punches. He's really fit. He's the right weight, and he comes to fight. And I just think your modern day heavyweight, they're just not geared up for that. And Fraser, as good as he is, he needed a bit of Derek Chisora. He needed a bit of Dillian White. He needed a bit of them 80s heavyweights that I grew up watching, because he's not streetwise enough. He's not feral enough. He's not aggressive enough or tough enough. Last night, I thought Fabio was brilliant to come out of the blocks the way he did. I thought he was at the right weight. He was a smidgen under what he was in the first fight, which tells me how hard he's been working. He set about Fraser. It's a brilliant win for Fabio. I can't speak highly enough of him. I really can't. That's how you put something to Kip. That's how you put the record straight. I don't quite know where Fraser goes. I don't think we've got much to worry about with the surgery. It's a broken jaw, that will heal. It might be a slight fracture of the orbital bone. That's even easier to heal. But I think that image of Fraser on one knee, you know, I'm not being disrespectful. I wouldn't do that. But with his mouth to one side and a snotty nose on his knees in the first round, I think it's going to be a very hard thing to overcome that. I think he'll have to go for a very long road of redemption and come back the long way round. But I think big fights for Fraser are a long way off at the moment, mate.
Yeah, he's probably not going to be in the ring for at least another 6 months. I mean, with an injury like that, he's going to be wired shut possibly. It's not a good way to be. It looks pretty nasty. But Ames, as far as it goes for Fabio Wardley, is it ridiculous for me to think that within the next 12 to 18 months, depending on what happens for them respectively on their paths, that a Daniel Dubois fight wouldn't potentially grab the attention of the British public?
No, it wouldn't be ridiculous, but I don't know if that's... I feel that even though this is a good win for Fabio Wardley, there's no real rush for him to really kind of skate and sprint all the way to the top. Just take your time, take the time and take the fights. And you know, if a big opportunity does present himself and fine, you have that discussion and you take it, and fair enough, and you dare to be great before you could. That happens all too often now in this generation of boxing. But for him, I feel like you can stick around and go and win. Excuse me. Go and win the British title outright. Go fight Solomon Dakers and have that fight. Go and try and have some, bridging fights before you get to world level, and maybe not take off too much before you can chew it, bite off too much more than you can chew it. I should say, actually. Like I'd like to team in with like someone like a Vianello, that sort of level of fight, and go in from there, and just climb the ladder and climb and wait for the Fury and Usyk to do their thing, and Dubois and such to do their thing, and then pick up a belt and build then from there. And you've still got good fights out for you. You don't have to rush your way to anything. This is someone who's you've got a good team as far as I'm aware around them. It's Dylan White's team as well too, but they're no jokes. They're no schmucks in the game. They know the way around the sport, and they know the right way to manage a fighter, from what I'm told. So I think he's in good hands here, and with Frank as well too. He'll know he's got a good eye for talent. He's scouted someone here who's his way of fighter, who hasn't been heralded, didn't go the traditional route of the Olympics and such. This is a Frank Warren fighter down to the T, and Frank will like that. I think Frank will kind of push him to be one of the jewels in the Queensway Crown, much like a Liam Davis or an Atam or any other the fighters, Hamza Shiraz, any of those types. I think he gets pushed up to that level now because of his background, and then because of that he's a heavyweight as well too. Frank's really kind of got a lot of pieces at heavyweight now, but there's no rush for him. As for the fight here, I didn't think it was going to go the way it did. I believe for the first fight I picked Fraser to win on points, and I believe for the second fight as well I picked Fraser to win on points too. But I was out again last night, and I had a look at my phone. I saw the fight start. I looked up, had a quick chat to my friends. I looked down, and the fight was over. And I was searching over on Twitter to see the ending, and it was brutal. And look, no jokes, no memes, no anything from me. It was a brutal finish, and one not to be laughed at from myself. I'm glad we've got the update from boxer and bench Shalom that Fraser's had surgery and he's on the way to recovery. And I just seen a clip now actually of post the fight when they went to Fabio and Fraser were able to embrace, and Fraser seemed to be able to talk with what had happened to him. So maybe it's not a broken jaw. I don't know. Maybe you can speak with a broken jaw. It's all different. It's all relative, whatever. I'm not sure. I'm not a scientist or a doctor here, whatever. But yeah, like for me, the kind of thing that I take from this fight is you've got someone who we expect a lot of because they've gone that route. They've had that GB training, that GB foundation. They've done those spars. They've won a bronze medal. So you expect a lot from them because of that. So you expect, and I was saying in the space earlier that sure, Fabio Wardley has absolutely brushed off the white collar background and that white collar tag, but the context of that shouldn't be lost in this fight because of the paths that they've tread. That's very much in the mix here. And this is for me, when I look at that, I'd say you have to drum it down and took it down a little bit. And you'd say, as looking at this, a guy who's come from that background shouldn't really be beating someone who's had those foundations, who's had those spars, who's had those resources put into him, who's achieved something so great in the sport as well too. And now you're at the point where someone's completely zoomed past you. Where do you stand now? You have to have like a serious conversation about where you are in the sport. And whether you continue, that's fine. But as long as you've had that serious conversation and this is what you want to do, this is where you've got to, I think for any kind of heavyweight who's at that age and suffers like a big brutal knockout, those conversations have to happen, even if they're brief or whatever. You have to have that. And if they're battered off and like, no, sweet, fine, but you've got to do that. And I think that has to happen now for Fraser. And if he chooses to continue, then the plan's got to be put in place, and he's got to kind of really kind of push for it, because you end up in the sort of wasteland of heavyweights, and you don't want to see someone like Fraser who speaks so well, a real ambassador from the sport, great to interview, great guy all around. I don't rarely hear a bad word about Fraser be kind of used and abused by the sport. So I think that conversation has to happen. But yeah, like a resounding victory for Fabio Wardley, and on to bigger and better things for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting where they move him along there. But I mean, if you want to talk about being concerned for a fighter and injuries, Rob, what we really need to talk about is that horrific event that happened with Ben Whitaker. As I watched it unfold, I immediately fell to my knees and was praying for his safety. And he left in a wheelchair. He's obviously in very terrible shape. No bullshit on this one. He's not faking it all, Rob.
Touch and go there for him by the looks of it, wasn't it? We were all worried about his foot. It's funny because anyone that tuned into the pod on Friday night, we kind of knew this day was going to come for Ben Whitaker. Not that he's lost his O or anything, but we were wondering speculating what he was going to be like once he goes up the levels. Many of us thought Liam Cameron maybe was a level that he could get a stoppage at and make a statement, but as Cameron said himself in the aftermath, he looked fucking goosed after 2 rounds. And the most telling thing from it is the fact that Cameron was able to hang in there with the pantomime style, cool, didn't phase him whatsoever. But there wasn't any speed on Cameron's shots. It wasn't like he was, outspeeding him or out timing him. He was just fucking kind of plodding there with the right hand, and he was catching him. And Whitaker looked tired, and he looked like he didn't have answers when he was under fire. And that kind of maybe he's in the same sphere as the guys that Des is talking about with the lions raised in the zoo, because he would have had everything his own way. He is the Olympian. He is the kind of showpiece fighter. He's the TikTok generation highlight. That's what he seems to fight for. But the highlight reel wasn't there last night. The highlight reel is him pulling a guy out of the ring. Just the fucking Ben Whitaker type thing to do as well. Pull him down over the ropes when they're on the road. Just fucking clinch like anyone else. What the fuck is he doing that for? So no sympathy for him. The only shame there in the end is that Cameron didn't get his win, because I didn't think that was a draw on the cards. I didn't see it last night in real time. I was just following the lads' analysis of it in the group chat, but watched it today, and he'd really looked like, I don't know if he's training properly, but he looked like very ordinary in the fight, very, very ordinary. Like his fucking kryptonite, or it's like Superman when he gets kryptonite or something. It's like he had no powers or whatever. And Cameron is not like, Cameron's an okay level fighter, but he's no great shakes. And he was giving him fucking nightmares. So yeah, there's a reason why he's been kind of put in with these kind of journeyman guys that he can look so good against on the start of his career. But he's got a long, long way to go. A long, long way to go. And I don't know. Fight fans can be fickle or whatever, and the tide can turn here and there different times throughout your career. But he hadn't really got much currency with proper boxing fans from the start, from the way he's kind of disrespected journeymen. Then you get people on side when you see, all right, he has a lot of talent. There is certain things there, and it is a bit exciting. But when you want him to bite down, he has his first basically he's bailed on his first real test, it looks like, as a pro.
Yeah, it basically seemed to me, Des, that he just didn't expect this in the pro game, and it was bound to happen. And Liam Cameron, I guess, was the guy. Whether they'll give him a chance to finish the job or not, I don't know. But take away whether you believe the injury is real, not real, et cetera, et cetera. In the fight itself, he was definitely on his way down.
I think I'd like to look at I'd love to know I'd love to know the thought process behind Boxer and how they match their fighters, because Dan Aziz, who's a boxer fighter, he won his European title, I think it was in France, and he's defended it, against really good British kids, his British title, that is, and he's been matched hard. And then you look at someone like Fraser, and you look at someone like Ben, but maybe they want too much money to match them hard, and they've taken them an easier route. And when you've got such talent, and Ben Whitaker's a real talent, I would have gone down the not quite as severe as the Lomachenko route, or the David Morale route, or the Andy Cruzman route, but I would have matched him a lot harder than what he has been matched. And I would have done pretty much what Rob just said. Let's give you to the crowd, and let the crowd see how talented, how good you are. Because I've got no doubt about it. If you give kids like Ben Whitaker tough opponents to a level, they will step up, because they've stepped up all their life. But for some reason, they've taken him down a very soft route, and he's been given one knockover after another. And when you throw that in with the finance involved and the lifestyle and a few of the videos and the TikTok mentality, I just wonder what type of boxer it leaves after 2 years, what you're left with. And what we saw last night, it looked to me as Ben Whitaker was in his first fight as a pro. I think Rob said that. And he gave it back. Now, I will say this: Liam Cameron's an interesting one because if we're going to talk about Ben Whitaker being flashy and elusive and having quote unquote a Nazim Hamed style, don't forget Liam Cameron's a South Yorkshire lad. He's been through gyms and he's been through the EIS where this whole Harold Graham style and the influence that Brendan Ingle has had on that particular part of the country, he would have grown up with that. So Ben Whitaker is nothing that Liam Cameron hasn't seen before. And Liam Cameron himself has been on GB squads. He's been around the EIS. He's won national amateur titles and he's won titles as a pro. So surely Ben must have known this was the big one. This was one where I've got to step up. And I'm in a complete agreement with Rob, and I'd like to know what Ames thinks. Going into the 5th round, I thought Whitaker had it all to do to turn this one around. And I've seen the fall, and I'm very, very careful not to use clumsy language. And I'm very careful not to disrespect fighters on this pod. But it seemed to me the sort of incident that I'd throw in with Paul Williams, Kermit Citron, Chad Dawson, Bernard Hopkins, and maybe Nigel Benn and Steve Collins, that type of thing. I'm not quite sure him being wheeled out in a wheelchair, surrounded by doctors and paramedics. I think we're being spun a yarn here, and I think Whitaker might have got himself out of one.
Yeah, feel free, Ames.
Yeah. So when this kind of happened, first of all, I was listening, I was tuning in on the DAZN commentary, and I didn't think the DAZN commentary was all that reflective of the fight. I saw a real good competitive fight between the two. Yeah, sure, Ben Whitaker looked like he was huffing a little bit, but I don't think that's reflective of, he's about to jack it and that's him on the way out there. Liam Cameron looked great in the fight as well too. And I don't know, was it you, Des, in the chat, or someone mentioned it? I can't believe I overlooked this the whole week to mention that point about Cameron and what we'll have seen being up in Sheffield and having those spars. I completely overlooked that point, and that wasn't mentioned enough in the fight week. And that started reflecting like straight from the off as well too. He wasn't phased. He wasn't like in awe of what was in front of him. He didn't give two shits about what Ben Whitaker was all about, or the highlight reels and stuff. He was there to get his. This is a guy he had to share ringside with Ben, who's looking to pitch himself and had pitched himself now for that fight with Eubank Jr. And his case is still ongoing, whilst Liam Cameron had to sit on the sidelines for 4 years, and he's had to go through the toils of not being able to fight. And now thankfully he's getting some opportunities and getting spotlights and razor close fights with Lyndon Arthur and a great showing against Ben Whitaker. Hopefully he gets another opportunity, and I'll jump straight to the end of my point here. Hopefully the rematch gets called as well too. But to track back here, for me, I thought that Ben Whitaker whilst this was a competitive fight, this is a fight where I don't think he was being bullied or dominated in here. He was throwing back, and he was catching shots, he was blocking shots. He was in there. This wasn't like and I think this is one of the things we talk about, like the GB kind of route and that sort of thing. When fighters go through that route, the hardcore boxing fans are kind of always waiting for that one fight where they go in with a guy who's like rough and rugged and shows them, yo, this is the pro game. These are the pro ropes. This is what you've got to contend with now. And whether they can muster that and pass that test, everyone's kind of waiting for that point. And I guess that was this point. And I don't think I don't think Ben Whitaker was like particularly wilting for me. That's the way I read that. I think he was in it. And people kind of make too much of, well, this guy wasn't dancing, so it was obviously something wrong wrong with him. Obviously, he didn't like it. Well, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Is dancing? Is he showing that he's respecting his opponent? Is he showing the audience that he can do it a different way? Is it that he can't? He was wilting. I don't know. I just take the perspective that it's not reflective of him saying that, oh no, I'm out of my depth here, so I'm not going to dance right now. I think he was just winning however he wanted to win in the ring there. But I didn't see signs of someone who at that point in, was it the 5th round, who was looking for a way out. I've got it when I look at that, it reminds me of Khan versus Crawford, and sure, completely different fight with the way it was going, but Khan got hit on, from what I remember, the cup, and he was saying he got hit in the cup, and he's saying he couldn't continue. Like, I'm not in his shoes. I don't know what the significance of the impact is there. So I've got to give the fighter the benefit of the doubt and say that, okay, this is what it is. They couldn't continue. Some people want like the visible shot of him getting up and hobbling on his legs, but I don't really need that. But that's got to be followed through as well. That's not a let you off the hook of the situation. That's a right. I need to question Ben Whitaker or Ben Shalom as to what the case is and what proof they can provide or willing to provide, and then the fans will either accept it or they'll shred him like they're shredding Ben Whitaker now. But it's like it comes across to me as something too perfect to manufacture, having to throw yourself over the ropes and then land a certain way, and you get the benefit of the slow-mos and things and one angle and such, but when that happens it's all slowed down. You don't get the significance of the impact, and it seemed like to me the knee whacked off of the canvas. And I know if people are throwing out memes of, I think it was the 2005 Royal Rumble where Cena and Batista went over the top ropes, and that happy accident where they both perfectly landed at the same time. But that's a happy accident. That's a strange scenario. That's like they manufactured that. Like, I don't know how Whitaker could have manufactured that. And to coin a wrestling term as well too, like Whitaker landed on the hardest part of the ring as well, which is that area, at least in a wrestling ring anyway. So yeah, I can't kind of say to that fighter looking at that like, no, you didn't feel that certain way. Like, that doesn't seem like that to me, because he looked like he grimaced straight away when you saw him on the outside of the ring, and when he crawled over onto his front, he kind of put his hands towards his head, and he said he couldn't continue. So that's what it is now. But you've got a fight now to save your reputation from those who are pointing the finger and saying you are quit. You did quit in the ring there. You're flashy to a point, but then when it's put on you, you don't want it. So that job, that next kind of 24 hours or so is going to be significant for Boxer and Ben Whitaker as to what they do and how long they leave it until they speak about it and what they present, because boxing fans are ruthless, and that tag of people, and I don't want to do it, but that tag of being a quitter, it takes a lot to wash off of you.
Whitaker, they're going to call him, I think, Ames. That's what you were looking for there, Ben Whitaker.
I've got to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
that might not be popular.
Not fair,
but...
like, and I don't think he like manufactured like I'm going to pull the two of us over the ring and then jack it. But I do think it looked like, and again, you're making really good points. It's compelling, like you say, he grimaced, but it's Cameron that was saying, his team were saying straight away, say you can't continue, say you can't continue. No, I don't know if there's any truth to that. Obviously, that bigs up Cameron's stock. But yeah, like you said, it's going to be tough. You know, boxing public very fickle. You've got your clip. All you need is the highlight. You see him going out in the wheelchair with the foot up in the air and that. Like, you can become, Adrian Broner knows, you can become a laughing stock on the way out of the ring after a bad result. Like, so, yeah, he's got questions to answer. But I guess, do you know what? In a way,
Broner got shit because when he left the ring, he looked like he had just left one of P. Diddy's parties.
Yeah, he said, Floyd, they jumped me, was my favorite meme, that one, from that particular night. But no, but it makes the Whitaker story more compelling now, because people were getting bored of this shit. Like, they were getting bored of him fucking doing all this. Like, so now maybe like we see, you know, he gets a chance at redemption, doesn't he? So if he goes out and, like, if they make a rematch or whatever, if he goes out and boxes Cameron's ears off, then, you know, he's made a statement. Like, but it's a crossroads for him now, isn't it?
Yeah, and
yeah. Go on.
Yeah, it's just tough to go where you go from here. I mean, obviously he's got two competing thoughts in his mind. One thought is that he wants to really give it a go as a boxer, and the other one is his great love for scuba diving.
There's only one place to go, and that is the rematch. You have to, because that's the best way and most steadfast way to kind of quell those doubts about him. You go for the rematch, you win the rematch, you try and do it as resoundingly as possible. You try and win the rematch, and you try and put as many of the doubters to bed as you can. You can't erase what happened now, and you can't erase the memes, but you do the rematch, and it'll do enough to, or as much as you can, to quell some of those thoughts. But what they can't do, and what would be a real kind of tell is if they wait out to see what Liam Cameron does, who now apparently is signed with Queensbury, and they let Liam Cameron Cameron's got a fight, and then Whitaker goes and gets a fight with someone else, and we couldn't do Whitaker Cameron 2 or whatever because Cameron was already tied up, and they move on. That's a big tell from their point of view as to how they feel about the fight. And although you don't get the fight materialized and Cameron won't get his day, you probably get some solace in the fact that they didn't take the fight with him the second time round. But it has to be, that's what I'd be looking for the next time around, the rematch with Whitaker and Cameron.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we'll see if that ends up actually coming off or not. God only knows what they'll do. They could look for an excuse to get out of it. They might.
Well, they were also thinking about doing a fight over in America with him headlining, and surely that's gone up in smoke now. With that happening, they've really got to kind of assess this as well too, and slow things down with Whitaker as well. And there's no shame in that as well too. Like, take your time with it and really kind of bed in with the pros, because like we're saying with Fraser or anyone else, like if you've got aspirations for the top, and with respect to Liam, he's a solid fighter. Like, if you want to get to the top, you shouldn't be having that level of struggle, or shouldn't be that competitive. You should be showing your levels there in that fight. And whilst it's still competitive, as I say, maybe you did want to see more of the levels from Ben, but I can't make the case for him that he jacked it in the fight. I just can't.
All right. Yeah, let's see here. The only other fight. Oh, there was 2 other fights on there that.
Matty, did you say what you thought?
Oh, I think he was looking for a way out 100%. It was just the first thing my mind went to was Kermit Cintron. And the funny thing is, the only comments on a video of him versus Paul Williams is who else came to this after watching Ben Whitaker. So, anyhow, yeah. Let's see. Anything else on that one before we move on to potentially brighter things? Maybe not.
What I would say about that, Matty, and by the way, I love the way Ames is so balanced with that. He was the same last night, and I appreciate that balance. I think we've got to be very careful not to use clumsy language, and there's a lot of things that are being said about Ben Whitaker that are probably really unfair. And we all know boxing, and we all know boxers. To go anywhere down that road of bottle job, coward, I think that's really unfair on any fighter. But I do think fighters live in the moment. Sometimes fighters, I'm convinced Beterbiev did it with Callum Johnson. He knew, I'm going to play the law of averages here. I'm hitting you and you're hitting me, and I know I'm going to get to you in the next 5 or 6 rounds. I think Lennox Lewis did it against Vitaly Klitschko. But likewise, I also think fighters make calculated decisions. I think Vitaly Klitschko made a calculated decision against Chris Bird when he sat on his stool and said, look, let's call this a day for today and let's live to fight another day. And I think Daniel Dubois made a calculated decision against Joe Joyce. I've fractured my orbital bone. I can't, it's blinking, it's painful. I'm going to come out of this one. And them guys have all been vindicated by the decisions. They've all come good. But I think as sports fans, we do have a right to expect a certain level from our sports stars. The sort of thing that, I'm not saying superheroes, but more than the average guy. And we've grown up with footballers, having their heads bandaged and carrying on the game. We've grown up with footballers and athletes pulling. I remember Derek Redmond pulling his hamstring on the 400s in Atlanta, and he would not stop until he finished that race. And his dad had to come on the track and help him get over the line. But I'm not giving up. And I just think we've grown up, and some of us have seen fighters die in the ring. Fighters come out of that ring and never the same again, and have to live the rest of their life with a lot of problems. And I just think some of us expect a bit more from our boxers, especially when that particular boxer told us how wonderful he is, than what I saw last night. So I'm somewhere between the two extremes. I wouldn't slate Ben Whitaker, and I wouldn't call him, sort of some emotive I wouldn't use any emotive, clumsy language to describe Ben Whitaker, and I like the balance that Ames is offering. But I think just as a general rule, we expect a bit more. And I'm someone that grew up with a Dennis Andrews and a Chris Eubank Sr. And these guys, they left it in the ring. So when I saw that last night, I thought, you was in your first hard fight as a pro. I think you was 3-2 down, and you've had your opportunity to get out of it. And I just think you've taken a calculated decision. Thought, I'm going to live to fight another day, and I want a bit more from my fighters than that.
I think that's pretty reasonable at the end of the day, as far as that take goes.
Yeah, Matt, I just had as well too. Just aside from that, Ben did look a slight bit off in the sense that when he's going to the corners, he seemed to be not focused, not kind of paying attention to. I believe it's Joby Clayton in the corner. He's since moved from Sugar Hill Stewart, although that's believed to be more of a logistics thing because Sugar's got Fury preparing for what was the Undisputed, now the rematch for the Unified. But it did seem like Ben he kept on looking up at almost like he was looking at the rounds, almost like he was looking at the time of the rounds and where he was and how long was left, and maybe not paying attention to what was coming from him from Joby. There were a couple of little odd things in the fight as well. So I think he was warned as well for using the head in the fight. Of course, it was an odd freak occurrence, but there was a couple of odd things that weren't what we've seen from Whitaker as well too, added in there.
Yeah, it was a night with a few odd things going on there. I think one of the reasonably stranger events was not actually the fight itself, but after Chris Eubank Jr. got the stoppage over Camille Scarametta in a fight where he looked pretty good. He was swinging for the fences against a very limited opponent, but afterwards in walked Conor Benn, talking shit to him in Spanish. It was quite the scene. Rob, this is one of those things where boxing and soap operas seem to just intermingle, and it was just pure drama and honestly just nonsense build up for a fight that shouldn't happen but will. But fair enough, if Chris Eubank Jr. has to be the guy to knock out Conor Benn, then that's fine, Rob. It just needs to happen.
Yeah, I said to the boys last night in the group chat that Conor Benn with his new relaxed hair, he looks like Vampire in Brooklyn and one of the brothers off 5 Star at the same time. He's and Neymar is there in the middle of it as well. What the fuck has it got to do with him? Like, why was Neymar there in the middle hyping it up? I don't know, man. I think Chris Eubank at 35 at 160 again for another camp. I don't like that for him. Like, saying that, he should still have enough in the tank to put away Conor Benn, because there's 2 weight divisions between the two of them, rightfully 3, I think. I don't think Ben has any business being at fucking 47, operating at 47 at world class, let alone going up to 54 or 60. Not that Eubank is world class. I think the best version of Chris Eubank, we saw it a long time ago, and we probably never saw. He probably achieved what he was capable of achieving. I don't think he's getting better with age. And I don't think he's a 160 pounder. And I think he's, after spending time up at 60, like he was at the Super 6. That's fully fucking 7 years ago, say 7 years ago or something. Like, so it's a long time ago since he was regularly making 60. And he's getting up to age as well. Like, so I don't know what this fight's going to look like. I don't give a shit about it. I didn't give a shit about it when it was made the first time. Then we spent ages talking about it because it was being made anyway, so it was a big talking point. We were all invested in it. Then, as I said, it gets pulled because this fool pops hot. Then he goes on a world tour of fucking legal spectacle and public appearance, and just serve your fucking ban, you moron, you. But yeah, I don't give a fuck about it. I hope Chris Eubank Jr. knocks out Conor Benn, but at the same time, if you want to see it, it has to be in England. Like, it fucking has to be in England, where the English crowd are there to work, to be invested in the story of the second generation of the Eubank and Ben story. What it's doing on a fucking Saudi Arabia card, I just don't know what the appeal is to the wider international market about this fight. Nobody outside of Great Britain would, should, or could give a fuck about that fight. And if it absolutely has to be made, I think it's a pity that it's not going to be in the UK.
I'm vaguely interested in the fight, and I don't live there. Does that mean there's something wrong with me, Rob?
Well, we haven't got the pod's only fucking 3 hours long, so.
Anyhow, I don't know on this one. Des, the fight itself, what were your thoughts? I thought Eubank Jr. looked good. If he's going to fight Conor Benn with Conor Benn not on the juice, I would change my thoughts from their original fight and go with Eubank. He's looking okay at the weight now. Honestly, I think he's making it in a professional manner, and I don't know. But he looked good. He's looking decent. He's throwing hard.
I mean, I didn't think he'd stop Zemeta. I think last night was all about how you see the wins. Whether can Opetaia get to Massie? Can Eubank stop Zemeta? I was impressed with the stoppage. I thought he was solid. He worked him over. He was going to body to the head. Chris Eubank Jr. looks like a solid pro, like just a solid pro. But he's, to this day, his best win without some sort of caveat is the top end of domestic level, like a Liam Smith. But don't forget, Liam Smith beat him, and a Liam Williams, and that type of kid. So I'm not saying there's not legs in Chris Eubank, but I think a lot of us are a little bit just boxing fans. You can't kid boxing fans. We know what we're being sold, and Eubank's not interested in fighting a Hamza Shiraz or a Janibek or a Lara for a lot of reasons. One, because he probably don't beat them guys. They're hard work. He's got to have a proper camp with a proper trainer, pay his trainer proper money, and also there's probably so much more money on the table for this Conor Benn thing. When Misfits boxing started, it was said by a few observers that this will creep into pro boxing because the money will dictate it. And I think what we're seeing now, I think it's the perfect storm for a lot of people involved in boxing. I'm not quite sure where Eddie Hearn and Matchroom go after AJ. And I think this is a great boost for them, having this type of fight. And you watched it last night. As soon as that fight finished, Eddie Hearn jumped in the ring. He waved Conor Benn in. They're moving him around. If in case you don't know, Neymar is a Brazilian footballer that's played for Barcelona and PSG, and he's a phenomenal player. But somehow they've put him in the middle in a promoter's role, and you've got this organised sort of WWE moment in the ring. And I like Rob, we was around when their dads boxed, and we're not interested in seeing this. So is the new generation interested in it? Possibly. I don't know. Is it something? Is there something going on in the world of social media I'm not seeing? I mean, how much interest does this fight generate to earn that much money that they can say to both kids, just put your careers on hold, tread water for another 6 months or for the last 2 years because we will get this one over the line. But what is certain, and we spoke about this on Friday, this is definitely happening. You know, they're laying the foundations for us now, and there's going to be a big announcement in October. And if it's not October, it'll be November. But soon there's going to be an announcement, and it's going to be something like Conor Benn has held his hands up. It's a private hearing. They're not going to disclose all the information. He's served 2 years. He's okay to fight, and then we're going to see Eubank and Benn. But as a boxing fan, it don't interest me. It doesn't tell me nothing. I'm not overly interested. I couldn't tell you what Conor Benn's best win, and without a caveat, Liam Smith is Eubank's best win. So I don't quite know how this fight has generated the interest it's generated. I don't quite know where we've got Neymar in the middle of the two of them. I don't know where we've got Turki Al-Sheikh pushing it and putting the money behind it. I just don't get it. It's Misfits boxing that's crept into pro boxing. It was always said it was going to happen, and I think we're seeing it here. I thought Eubank was a solid performance last night, but it still tells us absolutely nothing about Eubank and where he wants to go.
It was funny. Shalom kind of getting in front of Warren at the weigh-ins, and then happily pushing Neymar in front to get the picture with Eubank Jr. and Ben. I mean, Neymar brings a massive following. I guess they're trying to get some traction on casual sports fans, football fans, so they can tag Neymar in on the Instagram posts and drive some more traction over to a fight that's kind of stumbled in and out of the mainstream because of Conor Benn's positive tests for the performance. Like I thought Eubank. I thought this was going to go the way, and I think it was said in the zone commentaries. I thought it was going to go the way of. I remember staying up late to watch Demetrius Andrade versus Maciej Sulecki, and Sulecki got dropped in the first round, and then Andrade just coasted to the final bell, and it was just rubbish. And I thought, Eubank Jr. is just going to coast here against Zerameta after he's dropped him and played with his food and try and get some nice highlight reel moments in the fight. But thankfully, he ended up being able to finish Zerameta, and he needed to. This was billed by Shalom as well. I asked Ben Shalom, in the build-up, this is clearly a tune-up for Eubank, and he was like, no, it's a competitive fight. It's not a tune-up. I was like, I dread to think if this wasn't a tune-up, this is what's this a tune-up for? Another tune-up? This had to be a tune-up for something. Yeah.
So if we compare and contrast, Vince McMahon in launching WrestleMania 1 brought in Mr. T for the sort of Hollywood 18 demographic, and then he brought in Cyndi Lauper for the MTV crowd. Is this what they're doing now with this in terms of Neymar? And are we going to see Pixie Lott get put into this somewhere, or Ellie Goulding, or is it going to be that type of thing? Do you think?
Pixie Lott's a lot more faded. I don't seem to quite as profile gigs as she used to. Maybe Ellie Goulding might be a bit more, but I don't know if she's much of a fight fan. But yeah, no, I think it's more of a case of specifically with Neymar because, I think he plays for a Saudi league team and he may even be like one of these Saudi ambassadors. They can now cross him over from one sport into another. And there seems to be like a real directive from these mainstream companies, especially fight or combat sport companies, to cross borders where borders weren't crossed beforehand. Like, for example, I know it's a lot to do with the merger between WWE and Endeavor, but now you've got a lot of cross promotion there and a lot of things happening where both are kind of making reference to each other when both were seen as major competitors maybe 5 years ago, and then UFC streamed past them. But you see it now with on YouTube, YouTube channels like The Overlap, where you got Gary Neville interviewing whatever, and Troy Deeney's with Simon Jordan and all this sort of stuff. There seems to be that mesh now to, we're going to build this sport by taking these fans and this person from this, into the idea of Gary Neville interviewing Artur Beterbiev or something mad like that to just get eyes on the sport. You know what I mean? That
Conor
seems
McGregor leading the way in his BKB promotion.
Yes.
Having fights outside in the bull ring in Marbella, Spain, with Austin No Doubt Trout as the world champion and fucking Kodak Black, Dizzy Rascal, and the two lads from Versatile in Ireland playing. I know a couple of mates actually were out at that as guests of McGregor and Greenback Records alongside Exhibit as well at X to the Z. So maybe that is the future of sports entertainment, is the crossover between music and combat.
Was you brought in to pimp their fight?
Like it.
Anyway, yeah. So going back to I thought Eubank did what he had to do. Great, brilliant. And then the build up to Ben and Eubank Jr. is more of the same of what we've seen from these interviews beforehand, and in the fight week, him going up to Eubank after he's making weight or whatever it is. It's all the same kind of circus and fair that we've seen all before. What is kind of sticking in my craw, to coin an American term, Matty, is that the silence from the British Boxing Board of Control and or UCAD here. Robert Smith was there, as far as I'm aware, from what I've seen of Riyadh, the Riyadh fight week. He was there in attendance, and there's been nothing said about the situation at all, but it's been allowed to have these face-offs. And I wonder if Robert Smith, who I've sought beforehand, either on or off the record, to have a conversation, and he's brushed me off. And then a couple of days later, he's been on Talk Sport, and happy to speak to Talk Sport about the situation. Fine, no worries, but I expect to see the same, and I call for the same off of the back of this, to say something about as to where the situation is, and not keep dragging this out as to yeah, we'll find out in a couple of weeks, or we'll have something in a few weeks, and nothing come to any sort of conclusion. I think that's pretty poor. That's the situation right now. And whilst I and a few others in the industry have been trying to get some transparency to the situation, it seems like we're no closer to that, but hopefully closer to some resolution, either or. The idea of these face-offs and talk about this happening over in Saudi, I don't know the situation. Speculate here that maybe it might be something where you can fight overseas and not in the UK, but that's just me kind of spitballing here. I don't know what the situation will be. Last I heard, it was heading towards a court of arbitration for sport, and I think recently someone more in tune to football outside of Watford FC might be able to know, because that's all I really follow. Paul Pogba went to CAS, and did he get his ban overturned or reduced, and now he's back at Juventus? Is that right? Does anyone know?
Right, so I can touch on that, but I'm not overly an expert on it. But he's had his ban reduced, so I think he can now start training from January and start playing from March. But isn't there a caveat to that case where they have to disclose all the details?
Yeah, I believe that is the case. So
I can't see Conor Ben going for that.
I agree. So you'd imagine something behind closed doors will happen, but again, we're not privy to that information. And if that happens, casual fans might be fine with it and not really give a damn about it, but hardcore boxing fans, they're going to take this with them until the end of Ben's career. If they can't find a convincing argument or present anything to the boxing fans, then what can they go off? And that's a shame.
So how does this one? So how does this go, Ames? Because sorry to cut across you, mate, but I know you're informed on this sort of thing, and you're a lot closer to it, and you be speaking to people that are directly involved. So how does this go? Because for the last 2.5 years, Conor Ben would have put his hand on the Bible. Conor Ben has been on Piers Morgan's show. Conor Ben is adamant. I've got a dossier that exonerates me. I never done this. I'm innocent. I've been mistreated, and he's taken on an awful lot of big players. He took on the British Boxing Board of Control. He's been on various platforms and pleaded innocence. So if he is to hold his hands up, then that shows that he'll have to say I've gone guilty. But how would he be able to do that after all this time?
I'm not honestly. I'm not too sure. To be honest with you, you just have to be able to present his evidence to the CAS, and they'll decide upon it. The only thing I can think of that kind of, I'm a bit scatty on this, so I kind of want to hold me kind of back in this fully.
Yeah, I am. I'm not an expert on it.
No, but I'll say it anyway. I think in the UFC, maybe Matty knows, a couple of fighters have kind of tested positive for clomiphene, and they've sort of accepted it as it could be in contamination. Maybe Sean O'Malley had a similar sort of situation. Matty, I don't know if you know.
I know nothing of that. No, nothing.
No worries. Maybe someone in the chat knows, but you can maybe kind of pull arguments or cases from other places and try and argue your case there, but without any details, with the lack of transparency, you can't make the argument. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's I go through, you go through uni, you go through school, college, and uni, and you get your exam paper and you get your question, and your question is Conor Ben guilty or innocent? And you're supposed to present your case and you present your argument. Well, Conor Ben is not guilty because he has said that he is not guilty, and that is what we've been told. So Conor Ben is not guilty. That's all we have to essentially go on it, and Eddie Hearn says so as well. That's all we have to go on it, as opposed to factually the tests that have been tested positive for, and those are out. Not quite, the report of the test, but that's out public, that's just happened, that's leaked out now. And that's not enough for any boxing fan this is a guy who I still have a lot of goodwill towards Conor Ben, and I think people want to be on the side of, yes, this person is innocent, and I want to be on that side, but you've got the burden of proof is on you to prove that. And this is a fighter who had a lot of goodwill off of the back of, your Nigel Benson. Everyone wants to write you off. You'll never be as good as Nigel Ben, and yada yada yada. And you're faltering in the pro game, and this might not be for you. And he said, I've had these kind of long looks in the mirror, and maybe I would have quit the sport and done something else. And then he went away. The rhetoric was that he had hurt himself in sparring or whatever, and he kind of just spent a load of time honing his craft. And he come back out, and he come back against the German fella, I think it was, or I can't remember the time of events, whatever, but he come back and he had this sequence of fighting. He's looking dynamite hot. and we were in these Zoom calls during COVID, and we were all gassing up and saying like, "Wow, you look great. You look faster. You look better. Your technique's better. All this is better." What's happening is like, and he's just telling us like, he's just really kind of gone for it and really kind of trained and really kind of just added these feathers to his strings to his bow, and we were all kind of like there with him and like celebrating it all. So like I'm that guy who wants to see him kind of prove that, but you can't just do it off of not being transparent here, and that's what I think every boxing fan wants to see off of Ben. Another side point though on Ben though as well is, and I do want to follow this through, is I think the win over Dobson actually looks a little bit better now that Jalil Hackett has went the distance with Dobson as well, because Jalil Hackett, especially in these circles, was kind of talked about as one of the major kind of stars in the next generation of the sport, and he sort of struggled a little bit in that fight, and Ben did too. And I think Ben, because the conversation was when Hackett and Dobson was matched together, was that, oh, this is going to make Ben look bad here, and that wasn't the case. And I think actually Ben looked a lot better off of the back of that from that. And this is another reason as to why where I stand on the fence is like, I want to see this person do that and prove that is the case, and prove that this wasn't the case. But it's the burden, the proof is strictly on them.
Yeah, it has been quite an incredible journey for Conor Benn, and maybe it ends in a fight with Chris Eubank Jr. Maybe it continues beyond then. I do not know. The only other fight on that card of note, Sky Nicholson taking a unanimous decision over Raven Chapman. A couple of rocky moments early, Chapman getting low, throwing over the top. But, when you're going that low, sometimes you can't move as well as you would like to. So, unfortunately, for Chapman, she only was able to execute that plan for about 2 or 3 rounds, and then Nicholson took over. She keeps calling out Amanda Serrano. I think Serrano is going to fight Taylor at 140 for all those belts. I think Serrano's days at 126 are over, so I think that is a senseless plea, in my opinion. Ames, did you have something on that?
Only really that I thought, whilst there's of significance that this is the first female world title fight over in Saudi Arabia, and we've had female fights in the past, and it's a good step to have another one there, and that should be celebrated and credited for it. It was it wasn't the fight that was the advert for female boxing by any means. It was absolutely an advert for Sky Nicholson and how great of a fighter she is and how capable of a fighter she is and the skills that she has. But for women's fighting in general, not to the detriment of Raven Chapman here, it was just the styles didn't quite gel. It just wasn't that type of action fight, and I think you need that for that if you really kind of want to push more of those female fights happening in that region. You need an all-action fight. You needed a Sandy Ryan versus Michaela May. You need a Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. You need Serrano Taylor. You need Taylor Cameron. You need Taylor Bassoon. That's the type of fight that you want over there, because last night's action but just wasn't the advert for it. But Sky Nicholson comes out looking great. Raven Chapman, no doubt, will get another opportunity. Raven Chapman looks capable. I just feel that she didn't throw enough and throw with Nicholson enough, but that was because Nicholson was just in and out of range and picking great shots, to be fair. And she sailed to victory.
Yeah, she was able to kind of pick out what Chapman was doing and hold her distance pretty well. It was an easy task for her after she got her footing after the first couple rounds. But anyhow, that was a heck of a discussion on that card there. Let's go real quick to what happened in Japan earlier today, and also yesterday there was a win. Matsumishi Yabuki took the title off of Note Shinga. Now he's 108-pound champion again. He got it the first time after beating Kenshiro Teraji, who was in action on this big card today. He picked up a world title in another weight class, getting the vacant WBC flyweight title over Christopher Rosales, just beating the snot out of him until the ringside doctor pulled the plug on it. I thought it was a very reasonable idea to do that. But anyway, Taraji looked really good. He's a sharp puncher. He's got just really bust you up in there, and he looked a lot better moving up a weight class. Seems to have that gas tank back again. So Taraji upwards and onwards. Mr. Rosales has to figure it out again after getting 5 straight W's before this loss. Let's see here. Sokichi Iwata got a TKO victory over Yairo Noriega. I thought it was more of a KO victory. Noriega face down. Iwata, after having a few tough rounds with Noriega, landed a swift punch and was able to put him down. I also thought he hit him square in the back of the head on the way down. The ref didn't do anything about that. Noriega finding his footing again until he ate a left hook right at the bell in what might be a knockout of the year candidate, honestly.
Yeah, it's a brilliant left hook, Massie. Brilliant left hook.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. Nothing looks better than a left hook when it lands like that. Because the left hook counterbalances you. So you throw, and then when your left hook lands, it just kind of realigns you, and if you can throw a left hook like that and it lands, it just looks amazing. It's one of the best left hooks I've seen in a long time. It's a definite candidate for knockout of the year.
I really do love these fights in the lower weight classes because they're fun, and some of these guys freaking actually can punch quite a bit. So Iwata definitely registering that as well as picking up a WBO flyweight title, in a light flyweight title in that one. Maybe him against Yubuki on the horizon. Who knows? That could be an interesting fight. Seigo Yuri Akui getting a split decision win over Thanachai Cherampak. I'm probably saying that wrong. I apologize to him because he put up a heck of a fight. I don't know if the split decision was warranted. I thought Akui kind of stepped on the gas and he started finding some straight punches, and he didn't always land hard, but I thought he landed a little bit more often. And before we get to the main event, which was a heck of a contest, did anybody else see those fights and want to weigh in on them? All good. The main event, though, Takuma Inoue losing his title at 118 pounds to Saya Satsumi. Satsumi just came in throwing, rough fighter. He definitely gets out of position a lot, but he puts them together. He hooks and uppercuts. Had all sorts of trouble going on there for Inoue, who was also called down. I believe it was in the 10th or 11th round. Kind of got knocked into the ropes. I think he could have gone either way on that one. Their feet might have gotten tangled a little bit, but he got smacked around a bit in that round and has lost his title to Saya Satsumi, and that kind of is ruining the plans that they once had for Nakatani to take him on before taking on the better brother Naoya. So I don't know. Did you guys didn't catch that one this morning either? Did you?
No, I didn't, mate.
Oh, I was fucking hungover this morning, Matty. Come on.
Call me casual. I didn't catch it.
I would recommend it. This was a solid card here. That was I thought was quite enjoyable. So looking forward to seeing where some of those might go. Some of these lower weight classes have become virtually dominated by some of these Japanese fighters, and it just makes it so easy to do these unifications. And these are some pretty evenly matched fighters. So looking forward to it. Akui against Kenshiro Teraji is definitely a fight to look for on the horizon as well. So we will see. We'll see if they make those next or a little bit down the line. We always know that there's a chance for the New Year's Eve show there, but I think these guys might have been on a little bit late in the year to be coming again for New Year's Eve. But we'll see. We will see. So let's move on here. Here's a card, and I was told you can't miss this one. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't miss this one. So it looks like we have Anthony Yard against TBA, unless that's been changed. Jamie Shakiva, I probably got that one wrong, against Franklin Ignatius. One loss for Shakiva, undefeated for Ignatius. Dan Aziz going in against the undefeated Lewis Edmondson, only 9 fights under his belt. Is this too early? Adam Azim taking on O'Hara Davies. Davies has not fought since getting smacked out in a round by Ismael Barroso. And then Michael McKinson taking on Tulani Mbenge for the IBO welterweight title. This is an interesting card going on there for you guys in the UK. Any thoughts on this one, Ames? Do you think there might be a decent fight on there?
Yeah, I mean, starting with the top with Azim and O'Hara Davis, I was a little bit surprised that this fight, that Davis had took the fight, to be fair, because the history with McGuigan and, of course, Josh Taylor, and having that rivalry between the two, and having McGuigan steer Taylor towards what was a resounding victory in the end for him in that fight. I would have thought that maybe Davis might have looked to, especially coming off of world level, and this guy Adam Azim, who's like a hot prospect of climbing the ladder, but not anywhere near that level just yet. I thought this was it was a surprising thing for Davis, who maybe got a good payday out of this.
He really needs a statement victory too. He really needs something that makes a statement.
Yeah, and like with that said, like I don't expect to see the version of O'Hara Davis who came in the ring in this last fight and got blown out. It was a disappointing performance completely from O'Hara Davis, who looked to lay the blame at not correctly kind of laying his camp right in the last week of heading into the fight, and not sleeping correctly, and all these kind of things that led to a poor performance on his end when it was a brutal barrage from Barroso that ended the fight. It's kind of make or break for O'Hara here. But a good one for Azim as well too. People are suggesting like Azim's kind of never really been in tough, never really taken a shot, and O'Hara can whack it. And I kind of, obviously you don't kind of advocate for a fighter to go and get clocked in the chin, but you want to, that kind of chin check test has got to be passed, and you want to see that Azim has got that about him, so that when he gets to world level, he's not hashtag exposed or whatever it is, or found out, and this guy is the real deal, because Boxer, Ben Shalom are really kind of looking for that guy, and they've had a bit of a hit this weekend with Fraser and Ben Whitaker, and Eubank Jr is there with them, but for how long and for what fights? They need that next big star, and they've put a lot of resource and time and push behind Adam Azim, and he hasn't quite faltered yet, which is great, but you've got to see that continued progress, and he's in great hands with Shane McGuigan, and I expect him to come through this fight as well too. I think he'll come through the fight on points as opposed to stopping O'Hara Davis. I think he's still got a lot of legs in the sport. But it was a fiery build-up as well between the two. Expect to see more of the same. They switched things around. The press conference is on Wednesday as opposed to Thursday as well. It's at Twickenham, I believe it is. But yeah, that should be a good fight. Aziz versus Edmondson. I expect it to be a fight between two game fighters as well. Edmondson looking for an opportunity managed by Billy Saunders, and I guess they'll be thrown something in against Aziz, who's a tough operator, and Aziz was a little bit flat the last time round, and I can't remember, was it a draw? It was a draw against Sepp, and Sepp's like a tough operator. He's done a lot of sparring and around the world and with a lot of fighters, and I was a bit of a curious matchmaking last time round on the React Poor Bennett Smith undercard, and he can count himself lucky for a lot of people that he came through with the draw in that fight, because a lot of people picked him. Picked Sepp to win at the final bell. British title here. Aziz will have aspirations to get back up to a big fight after losing to Josh Boaty. And Emerson's got a point to prove here. I think points probably for Dan Aziz in that fight. Shakiva versus Ignatius, a good heavyweight fight. These are two guys who've sparred countless rounds with each other, and by both accounts as well too, they seem to be quite friendly with each other as well, consider themselves friends. This is a type of fight though it's the right fight, I think, for both of them, especially off the back of Shakiva kind of building back from his loss, and then beating Dovbychenko, which is a good win considering Dovbychenko is he's a bit of a minefield for upcoming prospects, and he's not for you can't overlook Dovbychenko. He's a good win for any prospect coming through. It's another kind of one from the Ben Davison, Barry Smith type of camp as well here, who fashion their fighters in a certain way, in a certain game plan, and looking to bounce back off of AJ. They just had Wardley kind of come back with a resounding victory, and to want to kind of keep that steam going. Don't really have a pick as such in that fight. I think it'll be a close fight between the two of them. Yard, look, I'm really happy to see Ante Yard back in the ring. Yard for me is probably my favorite fighter. I think he's an exciting fighter, all action fighter. Yes, sometimes we kind of want more from his opponents and the bounce up and down from big fight to not so big fight, sure. But I remember watching he did an interview on Sky Sports, and in that interview, he was just so charismatic. He was calling out all these fighters, and he looked the real deal. And I was like, where's this guy been this whole time? I was like, it dawned on me, like, this guy's been here, but the platform hasn't been there. BT or TNT is a brilliant platform, but it's not the same level of Sky. When you can wheel these guys out on Sky Sports News regularly and as much as possible as you want, and plaster them on different shows and whatever it is, like, it's just a completely different ball game. And it's a smart kind of move to align yourself with, I believe it's a 1-fight deal. Yard has come out and broke the silence on Stamina for Sale channel. I watched the interview, and he said that, and he kind of said that, look, I'm open to any fight. I'm open to any fight right now with any promoter. I've not kind of burnt any bridges from my end, but like I want to go for deals that are right for me and fights that are right for me, and hopefully those fights are the fights that I want to see, and hopefully those are fights where he can pick up a world title. I think it would be a real shame if Ante Yard, for the talent that he has and the way he fights and that he gives so much to the fans when he is in those big fights, like, for him to walk away from the sport and not picked up a world title would be a shame, or to have not fought your main competitor, the one that we've all been looking for in Josh Waxy, to not have that fight would be a real shame. And I want to see Yard kind of kick on now, where he's that little bit older now. He really kind of has to make the most of the back end of his career. He's 33 years old now. I really kind of want to see him push for those opportunities. So yeah, hopefully Yard, this is the start of momentum for Anthony Yard, and hopefully those, whatever the legal ramblings are in the background, are resolved pretty quickly, and Yard can kind of go in and just focus purely on his boxing career and really make a push, an assault for a world title now that we don't know what the situation with Bivol and Beterbiev is. Will it be a rematch? Will the belts fragment? Who retires? Whatever the situation is, it might be an opportunity in the next 12 to 18 months or shorter for one of these contenders to kick on and fight for a vacant or capture whatever is a world title against whoever it will be. But yeah, one of my favorite fighters, and good to see him back out.
Yeah, Des, you caught eye on this card. What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I'd like to see what O'Hara's got left. I'd like to see how good Adam Azim is. And I've not seen much from Adam Azim. I mean, but he's not done nothing wrong. I think he's 21, 22 years old. He's a European champion. That counts a lot for me. He's a young kid with a very big title. He's got a good trainer with him. But Barry McGuigan is a voice in boxing that I think carries a lot of weight. And Barry's one of them old school Irish guys, you know. If you're not that good, he'll tell you in a nice way, you're not that good, but we'll get the best out of you. I've listened to him in conversation with Adam and his brother, and he said stuff like this: the brother's still good, but not as good as Adam. Adam's the one. So Barry's very honest, and for Barry to say Adam's a real talent.
Well, at least some of the times.
Kind of. Yeah. Well, yeah. But when it comes to boxing, I mean,
Yes,
just
I
boxing,
hear you do that. Only
yeah. When it comes to boxing, Barry's got a very high bar. He knows what a good fight looks like, and he said Adam Azim's a very good fighter. So I'd like to see how good he is, and I think O'Hara's a good measure for a lot of us over here. We can gauge him against O'Hara. I don't expect O'Hara to win. I expect Adam to win on points, but wouldn't it be much like Opetaia and Massie, and much like Whitaker and Liam Cameron? we can get a gauge on how far he is down the line, Adam Azim. And you know, we've all in the back of our mind got a Dalton Smith, Adam Azim fight lined up. If they can all come through their challenges, and I think if Adam comes through this one and looks good and impressive, I think the Dalton Smith fight can become a little bit closer than we think. But he's got to get past O'Hara first. O'Hara's a strange one for me. Ames, do you know who O'Hara's trainer is for this one?
Slipped out of my mind.
No, it's not. It's not Mark Tibbs, is it?
No.
No. See, O'Hara's never invested in himself like that. He's never.
Is
Put
it
himself
Will
in
Jones?
Who
is that his name? Is it Will Jones? Is that his name?
No, I don't know, Ames. It might be right. I don't know. But the point I'm making there, Ames, is since he left Tony Sims, I've never seen O'Hara align himself to an established trainer in an established gym and get his head down. He's always looking for the new thing, and he's always flittering around, and that can't be good. I said the same at any level. I said the same about AJ when he's had 5 trainers across 7 opponents, new gyms, new journeys, new gym mates, new chemistry, different personalities, settling in, bedding in, a new locker. It just doesn't. It's not good. You don't want too much changes in a boxer's career, and O'Hara's never been settled. And on this pod after the Barroso fight, we spoke about the lack of experience in that corner, particularly in a fight of that magnitude abroad, having to go through fight week. We've seen it. It's sometimes fights are won and lost in that last week, and O'Hara didn't invest in that corner well enough. And I don't know what he's going to do this week. We'll see. It'll all sort of come out in the wash. But I'd like to see what O'Hara's got left. I agree with Ames. It's a must-win fight for O'Hara. Jamie TKV, yeah, he's back in winning ways. Got a good result last time out. It'd be interesting to see. I think he beats Ignatius, who beat Steve Robinson last time out, and his phone stopped ringing. He's been inactive for the last year, so I expect TKV to come through that. Dan Aziz has got a hard fight because I think Lewis Edmondson will be charged up for this. He's got Billy Joe Saunders as his manager. This is for a British title. He's on a decent run of form, Lewis, and Dan Aziz might have just peaked, and he might just be on the come down. And I thought he got beat last time out, and we see him get beat before that against Buatsi. So he's got to find something now, Dan. And I hope I'm wrong, because I like Dan Aziz. I think he's a brilliant advert for British boxing and domestic boxing. I think he's done it the old-fashioned way, and I'd like to see him carry on. But sometimes fighters just burn out, and it's hard to pick it up again. And we'll know a lot more about Dan Aziz this time next week. And of course, Anthony Yarde is back on the saddle with a new promoter on a new network. I don't quite know what to make of Anthony Yarde's career. I'm not as enamoured about Anthony Yarde as what Ames is. I think it's been a career built up on knockovers. His best wins, Lyndon Arthur. He's never been near a British title. I don't quite know what they've earned good money, I'm sure, and they've been beaten by some 2 very good guys, 2 Hall of Famers probably. But I don't quite know what the journey is. Is he going to fight a Buatsi? That'd be nice. But he's never been nowhere near a domestic rival like Buatsi before. I don't think he's going to hang around for Ben Whitaker. So I don't quite know where Yarde goes. Maybe Ames can tell us. But yeah, it'd be a routine knockover job for Anthony Yarde, but at least he's back on the saddle and he's out boxing again.
Right on. Rob, any thoughts on this card before we move on?
Yeah, not really anything to add from what the lads have already said. The Yarde situation's a bit interesting to me. I just saw a clip of a headline. I know he's going through it with Queensbury, isn't he? He's saying like he's leaving Queensbury. He has a fight left on his contract, or he's disputing he has a fight left on his contract, something like that, as the lads explained to me on the pod before. But he has this kind of, he's saying something interesting. I think everything that he does is like unorthodox, from the no sparring, him and Tundi. Like, he could be a lot better. I think he has the attributes to be a lot better. I just think sometimes he's moving in the wrong direction. The quote that stand out for me is that nobody owns me. And that's cool. Like, that's cool in entertainment, in sports, or whatever. At some point, you will become bigger than the owners. So you become bigger than the promoters and you call your own shots. I don't think he's in that category, and I think just because he shared the ring with two great fighters and acquitted himself well in fights that he ultimately lost, I don't think that gives him the currency that he thinks he has in the sport in terms of draw. So would just like to see him more active because I do think he has a very exciting style and he is a big puncher. And I just think he has, this is from the outside looking in, I don't know anything about the relationships he holds with the promoters or the trainers, but I just think he could be a lot more. I think he could do a lot more.
And Rob, I thought it was a strange move, Rob, to leave Queensbury. And I think Frank had a lot of time for Anthony Yard. And if you go back a
Frank
few
backed him
years,
big time. Big time. He backed him to go
yeah,
to fucking Russia. He won. Didn't Frank bid on that fight or something to get him
he did.
to Kovalev in the first place, and again for Beterbiev.
Oh
Like, yeah, they
yeah.
backed him all the way. Like,
But I think Frank's old school in that he really appreciates loyalty. And in the dark years of Box Nation, and Frank was propping up shows with Bradley Skeet and Anthony Yard headlining, I think he gave Anthony Yard a good run of you're gonna you're gonna be brought along here at a very easy pace against guys that can't really beat you. Not to be too disrespectful, but I'm gonna give you a line of knockovers here, and I'm gonna keep you active and keep you busy. And I think Frank Ames might be able to shed a bit more light on it without without breaching any confidence. But I think Frank put a good bid in for the Boazzi fight. I think they refused it, and I think they've tried to get out of they've got out of their contract, haven't they? And they've now come to an agreement, from what I hear. But I think leaving Frank, particularly at this time with the Riyadh thing kicking off, I think it was bad management from the yards from the yards point. I think he should have stayed with Frank. But look, he's at a new team now, new network, new promoter, and let's see what it brings. But it did surprise me to split that relationship with such a powerful promoter at such a prosperous time for that company.
I can't say too much on. I think the finger's been pointing from Eddie, I believe it was, about the Bivol fight not being taken. I can't remember what Frank's account of it is. Yard says on that interview, like, he turns it down and he goes, like, I'm the guy who went over and fought Kovalev in his home country. Like, I'm the guy who fought Artur Beterbiev when, other light heavyweights are, they're not willing to take these chances. They're not willing to really kind of roll the dice. He was the one who's doing it first and throwing himself into the fire. And that's like that's a compelling enough argument for me to kind of say, all right, yeah, maybe he didn't duck the Bivol fight, but I don't know what the ins and outs are of that situation.
Well, he finds himself fighting TBA this Saturday. To jump back in time, coming up tomorrow, we have another one of those Japanese cards that's on run, and you guys should be able to catch this around the late morning into noon time. Going to have Tenshin Nasukawa taking on Jerwin Asilo, who is also undefeated. Let's see here. Jerwin, 9-0, 4 stoppages. Has he fought anyone that matters? Not in particular. So that one, we'll see. There must be a reason why the odds are wide. There you go. Let's see here. Kosei Tanaka taking on Fumalele Kafu with the WBO World Superfly title on there. Kafu 10-0 with 3 draws, but he's had 6 consecutive wins. Anthony Olasquega, I think we remember him taking on Taraji on short notice and doing all right. Taking on Jonathan Gonzalez for the world flyweight title. That's a big, another big jump up in experience for him, but he is the favorite in that fight. And all of this is appetizer for Junto Nakatani, putting that WBC title and his undefeated record on the line against the 76-1 Tasana Salapat, who might go by something else, I'm sure. I think I saw it in the chat. I think he's from Thailand, and yep, and they do different things there. He's also known as Petch CP Freshmart. He is not the knockout CP Freshmart that we have all come to know and love. Anyway, let's see here. Any thoughts on this card, Ames, before we move on to what's happening on the weekend?
No, nothing. Sounds like a great card, but I've not got any thoughts or anything to add on it.
All right. So yeah, that's all going to be an appetizer for what is coming up. What I think this is in Florida for some reason. And it's going to be, I'll tell you, I think if there's anything worth mentioning that doesn't have to do with the fight itself, this is the first fight since this Amazon Prime deal was announced that's just going to be on regular Prime, not a pay-per-view. The undercard, underwhelming, a couple of 6-rounders and 8-rounder. Why even talk about it? It's getting late. This one is going to be Bakram Murtazalia putting his title on the line with Tim Tszyu in the opposite corner. Tszyu, a mighty big favorite in this one, coming back from that Cutfield loss to Sebastian Fundora earlier in the year. This could end up being a pretty decent fight. Do you think that the odds makers might have this one wrong, or do you think this is a walkover for Mr. Tszyu, Des?
I don't think it's a walkover. I think it's the right opponent for Tszyu. I think it's the right opponent for Tszyu on the back of the Fundora fight, and I think it gets Tszyu. Is this his first fight with Amazon Prime?
No, I think earlier in the year that one with Fundora also was on Amazon Prime.
That was on Amazon Prime as well. So I think this gets Tszyu. I think this gets Tszyu back on the right road, and I think he'll either look at a return with Fundora. But I think this is the right opponent for him. And I think Murtazalia, I think he'll offer something, and I think he'll be durable. He's got a good pedigree. He's a Russian kid. He can punch a bit. No, I think it's a perfect opponent, but I expect Tszyu to win.
Okie dokie. Rob, are you excited to see Tszyu back in the ring? Are you going to take time out of your busy life to check out this fight?
Well, this tonight, is it?
No, it's on Saturday.
Wednesday, is it?
Saturday.
Definitely not.
Do you mean Wednesday? What fight is it? And what day is it?
Tim Tszyu on a fucking Saturday night. You're out of your mind. No, I like Tim Tszyu. I think he's a good fighter. I think he has a lot to offer. I think it's a pity for him that he got the cut versus Fundora, but I do think Fundora asked some interesting questions about him at world level. I think he's been matched very well. A lot of the fights are in Australia. Yeah, he's come across to the States. He wants to make big noise. He wants to make a name for himself as a Tszyu in his own right. Motherfucker, I'm not no junior. And I just think, this is the right opponent for him to get the Masters back. I thought it was a very strange fight to have as a debut for Amazon Prime into the boxing world, as having Tim Tszyu and Fundora, who was a late replacement, I believe, wasn't he? He was supposed to fight someone else too. Was he?
Yeah. He was supposed to fight Virgil Ortiz, was it?
Virgil Ortiz or one of the Charlos, was he?
Yeah, something like that, I think.
Something like that. Yeah, so it was maybe maybe they were lining him up down the line for a Charlo fight, but we don't know what the fuck is going on with either of them. They seem to be in hibernation. So let's see Tszyu do it. Let's see him back. I'd like to see him. I think Fundora and Crawford is next, is it?
Fundora and Spence.
Oh, Fundora and Spence. Okay, I said Crawford again last week. I don't know why I thought that fight was made, but yeah. Maybe they're lining them up for a potential fight with Spence down the line, like as a kind of a coming out party when Spence is checking out. But we'll have to see. But yeah, he's a good fighter. There's nothing wrong with him. Like I'd watch him fight. Like he has balls and he comes to win. So yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I think this is an all right fight. I think there could be some good exchanges in it, but I do think that if Tszyu has anything left, if he has anything left, I do think if he's not damaged as far as like cutting too easily, I think that he should be able to get the W on this one. What are your thoughts, Ames?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, it was a spirited effort from Tszyu. Never really, we're talking about ways out of fights and from fighters and inventive ways of doing things. Like he never looked for a way out. He just fought, and he fought on as much as he could fight on. And yeah, like I think in terms of kind of looking at him and thinking, is there any kind of hallmarks of that apart from anything physical? I think Tim Tszyu will have gained mentally more than lost anything physically. So, I mean, of course, a worry of a cut will be, something they'll have to manage for. But now he's got the experience of handling that and fighting through something like that. And losing on the end of it, you can only gain from that situation and expect him to bounce back. I don't know what the situation was with the IBF, but maybe he can count himself a little bit lucky, a bit of promotional tricks here to come back straight into a world title fight against Mosadaliev. He's got a good opportunity here and one that I believe he'll take with both hands. So yeah, Tszyu for the win.
All right, yeah,
Massie,
that one. Go ahead,
Massie. I'm agreeing with you. I think that was a really hard fight with Fendora, but I've just looked it up because I couldn't work out who it was. The original fighter was Keith Thurman, so that was the perfect opponent.
That's right.
Yeah,
one time.
Yeah, but
went from a 5'7" welterweight to 6'5" freaking
yeah.
junior middleweight. Great move.
And Keith was inactive, and he's coming up in weight, and it would have been perfect. And then he was very brave taking the Fendora fight, but it was bleeding strange to take that one because it was such a 180 opponent. But I think this one is where he gets back on the saddle.
Yeah, thanks for that. I could not remember. Yeah, and I think Keith is probably done because I don't really think I've heard a peep from him since then. So anyhow, yeah, that was and I called it on the pod. I said that was a terrible change of opponent. I don't know why anybody would do that.
Keith Thurman last spotted in Vegas alongside Maddie and fucking Donnie. That was the end of him. Never to be seen again.
You probably ran into one of them scandalous prostitutes out there, and they ruined his life somehow. Crazy whores.
We wish him well.
But anyhow, yeah, there's a fair bit to watch. Also, I didn't touch on. There's also a Pro Box card that's going to be going on this week. Let me pull that one up here. And that's going to be headlined by Chris Colbert against, let's see here real quick. Sorry, folks. I know I forgot to pull up one of these. Now, remember, he lost his last fight against Jose Valenzuela. Obviously lost the one before that one, but got absolutely smoked the second time around. He's going in against Omar Salcedo Gomez. I think I've only seen him listed as Omar Salcedo before. He's 19-1, 13 stoppages. And he's fought a few decent fighters. He lost to 15-0-2 Jose Nunez on a Pro Box card last year around this time. I can't remember that fight straight off my mind, but there was a lot of points off there. So either knockdowns or deductions. Could be a dirty affair. But also on that card, the other one that I thought was worth mentioning, Senvatar Erdinaivat, I always have a hard time with that one. The Mongolian lightweight taking on Prensy Fortunate Saya, who has only lost one fight, and that was against, I don't remember if it was of anyone of note. It was a split. It was a unanimous decision loss to an 8-2 fighter. So you never know on this one. He is at a higher weight here, but that Pro Box card could be worth your time, at least for the last two events. So you got a little bit of action going on. You got some stuff Monday. You got some stuff Wednesday. You can have your fun with the O'Hara Davies card on Saturday evening for you folks, and wake up and watch you some Tim Tszyu. All you got to do is fill in a couple of days. Other than that, you got your week planned. You go to work, come home, watch boxing, take one good crap, and you go to bed. Start it all over the next day. So anyhow, that was a good one. We got to about 2.5 hours on this one. Yeah, I appreciate everybody for coming on today. We had Dez, we had Ames from Seconds Out, and we also had Rob Kelly on here as well. Y'all make sure to check us out next week. We're going to be previewing Prograis against Catterall, as well as finishing up all of the reviews for what we have discussed today. Thank you very much, Miami Virtue. Appreciate that one. But for the gang, I've been your host, Matt DiGianardo. I hope you guys have a fantastic week ahead of you, and we will see you next Sunday.
We'll never forget.
I think that's good.
We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking wank that can fight me.
I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
but allegedly Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7-year ain't it? 7-year ain't it?
I will fucking smash fucking you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love boxing sounds. Simple as that.